Hello, everyone. It's such a privilege to have you join us today at day two of the 2022 Tax Conference. If you were in the day one of the tax conference, you would have seen that we had such a spectacular time, just talking about different topics as it relates to tax. So it's the Taxpayers Conference 2022, and my name is Funke Bolodioko, and I am excited to welcome you to what is going to be such an informative time, a very good use of your time today, and I'm just happy to have you join us. So, without further ado, we'll just go in. It's 12:02 by my time, and then we'll go quickly into what we have. I'll just do like a brief run through of what you could expect from today's session. We're going to be having different panel sessions, one of which would be the panel session that talks to what the role of technology is as it relates to tax. Is there a role that technology plays where tax is concerned? Is there something, can we leverage technology to make it better? We'll start first with the speech from the guest speaker, who is no other person than Dr. Dick Ari. He is the coordinating director of the Compliance Support Group of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIR. Who better to address us, who better to deliver the guest speech for today than, an erudite taxman himself. And then we'll move on from that to the first panel session. And this is just to, prepare your mind for what to expect for today. So the first panel session would address what technology and taxation, is there an interplay? Is there any disruption that technology has brought? Are there challenges? And if there are challenges, will there be solutions? And then we have this panel session is made up of fantastic panelists from Mr. J.D. Choi, to Mr. Graham Tilbury, Mr. Gareth Harrison, Richard, and then Mr. Fred Oyetayo. And our moderator for the first panel session is no other person than Ms. Mercy Frank. So there's still a lot more to happen, but then I'll move on quickly to take the guest speaker's address. And this is based on the topic Revenue Authority of the Future. What does the Revenue Authority of the future look like? I'm sure that you'd have a good time listening to him. I'm sure that you'd have a good time listening to him. Um, yeah, and then this would have like a brief question and answer session from the first panel session, and then there'll be a breakout session. There's also going to be another panel session, and then we'll take questions, we'll take answers, and then our closing remarks through vote of thanks. So we'll move on to take the guest speaker's speech, Dr. Dick Ari. I would do quickly to just introduce Dr. Dick Ari to you. Like I've said earlier, he is an erudite taskman and is our guest speaker for today. If you would please let me know where you're joining in from today. It would be nice to know where you're joining in from. So if you drop a question, a comment in the session, where are you joining in from so that we know. I can see that Mr. Dick is already in here with us. Thank you so very much for joining us today. Good afternoon. Good
Thank
day,
you,
sir.
Thank you, Funke.
Okay, I would run quickly to introduce you so that people know what to expect and they know that they are in good hands for today. I was just trying to get some comments, know where people are joining from, just to have that going on. So keep it coming in. Where are you joining in from? Lagos, Nigeria, Abuja, Ibadan. I like to know where you're joining in from. Just keep it coming. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much for that. Um, okay. Without further ado, I'll do quickly to introduce Dr. Jake Airy to us. He is the coordinating director of the Compliance Support Group of the FIRS. Dr. Airy is an astute professional and an experienced tax administrator. is a fellow of the Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. Dr. Drake holds a PhD in accounting and MSc in public sector accounting from the Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Dr. Eri is also attained his MBA in financial management from Ladoke Akintola University of Technology, Ogbomoso, a BA in accounting and finance from the University of Derby, United Kingdom, and has also a certificate in leading in the digital era from the Harvard Business School, Boston, United States. Dr. Eri has over 3 decades of professional experience in the financial sector, covering banking, audit, insurance, and tax administration. He is currently the coordinating director, Compliance Support Group, Federal Inland Revenue Service, supervising 5 departments, which includes the Tax Policy and Advisory Department, the Tax Audit Department, Special Tax Audit Department, Policy and Program Monitoring Department, and the Taxpayers Service Department. He had earlier served as a director stroke head of the Technical Department State Coordinator Tax Controller and the Special Assistant to the erstwhile Executive Chairman of the FIRS. He is a recipient of the ECFIRS Award, amongst numerous other awards. As a special advisor to the ECFIRS, his immense contribution to the design and implementation of the FIRS reform in 2004 resulted in the enactment of the FIRS Establishment Act of 2007 and amendments to a number of taxes in Nigeria. I have not gotten to the end of his profile, but I'm sure that you're already riled up. You know that you're in great hands and you're clapping and excited to hear from Dr. Eri. Before he joined FIRS, he worked as an assistant manager, treasury operations in the defunct Allied Bank of Nigeria PLC, as well as an audit senior and supervisor at DO Dafion and Co., now known as Crowe Dafion. In these years, he has built a track record of leading different initiatives and developing innovative solutions to achieve laudable results and also to serve as an advocate for building the next generation of leaders. Dr. Eri has taken part in many foreign and local management and leadership trainings, which include tax administration, investigation and business investment, managing diversity in the workplace, executive leadership development, change communication, management potential, and managing people for strategic advantage. You have heard it. So, would you please welcome with me Dr. Dick Eri as he delivers his guest speaker's speech? You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Funke. Good afternoon, everyone. On this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I'm speaking to you from my home in Abuja here, Apple. I think I can go ahead now, Funke. Am I on? Okay, that's great. Now, this afternoon, I'm here to speak to us on the topic Revenue Authority of the Future, under the overall theme of boosting taxpayers' morale globally. That is our role as both tax administrator, individual, tax professionals, and whatever role that we play. Now, looking at the future, let's talk about the morale first. What is morale? Tax morale. To me, this is what makes or what drives the taxpayer to either comply to pay voluntarily or look for a way to manage or plan his tax affairs, or if possible, probably evade tax as within his power. But whatever we do, we must also ensure that the taxpayer is put in a position to be able and encouraged to meet his civic responsibility. So looking at tax revenue of the future, we must start by first looking at what was it in the past and what is it even today, and what is it that we are not perhaps pleased with that we need to move forward or improve upon. And I will start by quoting the one American statesman, Patrick Henry, who said, I know, and I quote, I know of no way of judging the future but the past. That is his own, I mean, in his own view, for you to look at the future, you cannot totally forget the past. So there is a link between the past, the present, and the future that we are looking at. We know today that digitalization has become a phenomenon that we cannot shy away from. So for us, talking about the tax authority of the future, we are confronted with what is the level of trust that we are building. What about the global changes that are taking place all over the world? Then what we need to strengthen in our institution, and also the technological adoption that people have taken to all over the world. We cannot shy away from these facts. These are facts that are confronting us that we must address. Today, as we speak, there are companies that do not have physical presence and using Nigeria as a base, for example, in Nigeria, and yet still derive a lot of revenue from Nigeria. And there are so many. We are all witnesses of what is happening, like the Twitters, the Amazon, the Google, the Facebook. We all participate in all these companies. Some of us even have shares in them. But the fact is that these are companies that are not physically present in Nigeria, yet derive a lot of money from Nigeria. This is what digitalization and globalization has brought about in the world. So what has this brought to us as a tax authority? One, why some of them have created loopholes to us that we need to fill, they have also presented to us opportunity that we need to harness so that we can have the right tax administration in place. Now, as I said earlier, there is a link between the past, the present, and the future. So looking at the past of Revenue Authority, it has shown us that there are a lot of progress that need to be made. For example, if I take a Federal Revenue Service, for example, it started like a department, as a department of Ministry of Finance, then gradually became the Board of Federal Revenue Service. And today it has become a quasi-autonomous institution that have control over its revenue, has control over its employment. It can employ, it can fire, it can also generate funds, it can also finance its daily operational needs. So it has progressed over the years, and there's still more to be done. Now, the reality of today with the past presents a mixed feelings to you and I, whether I would like it or not. There are things that we need to look at, and there are things that are concerned to us that we must prepare to conquer. I'm on the next slide already. Now, the only way we can make progress is to detach ourselves from the past as much as possible. As long as we're entangled with the past, we cannot move forward to the future. Yes, the past is important, but ours is just to learn whatever lesson that we need to learn from the past, areas that we need to look at and move on. So, since the world has become a global village, we must benchmark with what is the most efficient way of driving revenue authority. What is the most effective way of delivering service to the taxpayer? And of course, what is the competence that is required on the part of the revenue authority to be able to deliver what the revenue of tomorrow will look like? So in all this, revenue authority of the future must leverage is based on what is the concept, what is the conceptual framework that revenue authority of future is going to be based, and the practical steps that we need to take to achieve our dream of the revenue of tomorrow. So all stakeholders are required to jointly come together in doing this, either the policy level, which talking about the government, who are involved in the policy management, or the regulation, the legal dimension, even those that have to enact our laws and review and perhaps change our laws to suit the current state of things, or the service delivery which the taxpayer yearn for, a more efficient and effective tax delivery that the taxpayer is interested in. In all this, whatever we do, the focus will be to improve compliance, both on the part of the taxpayer and also you, the tax revenue authority that want to also service the taxpayer. So in all, after in achieving this, then we can this then that we can say improve tax revenue, morale of taxpayer can be achieved. There is a social contract connection between the taxpayer and the government on whose behalf the revenue authority is acting to derive to generate revenue for the government. So the government, the taxpayer need to see what government is also doing with the revenue that is generated. Though tax payment does not relate, is not really tied to a specific service that the taxpayer must enjoy. But in the generality of all, the taxpayer is interested in what exactly is government doing with the tax revenue that is being generated. So once these things are properly put in perspective, then we can say we can boost the taxpayers' morale in compliance. So comprehensive reforms are required, and in doing these strategies that would make it an efficient service delivery institution is what the revenue of tomorrow should look at. So reform itself means form again. That's my own word, coinage of the word reform. You need to form again. In forming again, you want to reposition the institution put in a better position so that it will be able to meet the future challenges. The future portray a lot of challenges to the general public, and the public need to be, the tax revenue authority of tomorrow need to be prepared to meet those challenges. So preparation for the future involves one, realign the existing structure. What structure do we have in place? What system do we have in place, processes that we need to make simple and simpler to also meet the demand of tomorrow? Then the human and material resources that we need to deliver on whether the plan or target or the overall strategy direction of revenue of tomorrow. But two questions will come to mind immediately as we discuss the revenue of the future. The first question is, what features of our current tax administration structure, for example, either the culture, the system, the processes, or skill sets that constitute a barrier to reaching the revenue authority of the future? And this I can speak, let me just permit me to speak to this a bit. For example, in Nigeria, we have almost over 40 revenue authorities, so to speak. And I can break it down for us to quickly align with. One, we have 36 revenue state authorities, and that's 36. Then we have the Federal Capital Territory Revenue Authority. That makes it 37 revenue authorities in Nigeria. Then we have at the federal level, we have the Federal Revenue Service. That brings it to 38. Then we have the Customs and excise department that collect duties. That makes it 39. And of course, so many other, whether legal or illegal, other authorities that want to also do revenue collection. So we have almost 40 revenue authorities, and this does not make room for proper coordination and control to achieve that is not the type of revenue authority that we are looking at of tomorrow. Consolidating and coming together and harmonizing all this effort in a proper perspective will make it better manage system for the both revenue official, even for the taxpayer who may be confused on who to pay my taxes to. Number two question that we need to sort out, talking about revenue authority of tomorrow, is what sort of strategy do we need to take advantage of in order to be able to exploit existing strengths and opportunity towards achieving our revenue authority of tomorrow. There are strengths, there are opportunities, but what are the strategies that we need to deploy to achieve all this. Now, I've prepared here 8 different specific steps or things, the areas that we need to look at if we must have the revenue authority of tomorrow. That's what I mean. Tomorrow is of the future. One thing that revenue authority of tomorrow must be dynamic. Dynamic in the sense that it must be proactive. Any revenue authority that is doing catch-up, that's reacting to the development, we must be able to project what are where's the technology, where's the business of tomorrow moving towards, and we must go a step ahead of these institutions. Otherwise, we'll be doing catch-up, and in that way, they will leave us behind. They will leave revenue authorities behind. Number 2, legitimacy and trust and fairness. The taxpayer must see the revenue authority as being fair and equitable in dealing with them. The same practice or measure that's given to taxpayer A should also be the same that's given to taxpayer B, considering the same circumstance that they all fall into. So the taxpayer is interested in having the trust of the revenue authority, and revenue authority must also strive to gain the trust of the taxpayer. Number 3, technology and innovation. This cannot be overemphasized because I earlier said that digitalization have taken over the whole business world. So to create comprehensive and reliable tax database through technology and innovation is one thing that revenue of tomorrow or the future must take seriously. And number 4, data-driven. In my profile, as was said, that I just attended a certificate course in Harvard on leading in the digital era. And it was emphasized here that decision must be driven with data-based decision. That is, whatever decision that we are taking, either as leaders or revenue authority, if we have adequate data, it will be fine. But in Nigeria, for example, which I told you I must use as my base of reference, we have various data silos, which is not good for our revenue of tomorrow. If we must have a good revenue of tomorrow, then all this data that are in silos must be harmonized, harvested into one comprehensive database that everyone can have access to. For example, we have in the banking sector, we have what we call BVM. In the registering individuals or citizens of the country, we have what is called NIN. In tax offices, for example, for the federal level, we have what is called taxpayer identification number. In the Corporate Affairs Commission, where businesses are registered, their business name or limited liability, we have what is called ROC number. So all this identity must be harmonized into one. This is how the revenue of tomorrow should look like, not operating in silos. Number 5, collaboration. Strengthening collaboration, the collaboration within agencies is very key. And what does this do? This gives the opportunity to exchange information seamlessly. That within agencies that have information, they can exchange this information easily when there's collaboration. For example, talking about enforcement of revenue tax, recalcitrant taxpayer, for example, the EFCC is an arm of government that is an apparatus that have apparatus to be able to enforce compliance, for example, or those that are involved in money laundering or whatever money that is moving about the whole place. ICPC, for example, is an agency of government that is also empowered to enforce certain things. So when all these agencies collaborate and work together towards the same goal, it makes life easy. Then most importantly, what we need to gain here is what we need to look at here, talking about revenue of tomorrow, is information, exchange of information, whether local or foreign. For FRS, for example, we are keen to OECD platform, and we have automatic exchange of information that is going on. We can give them, and they can also give us. We have obtained information from about over 36 countries all over the world. Knowledge, number 6, knowledge and simplicity. Whatever we do, we must have the taxpayer in mind. We must make the tax process easy for them to comply, and also make the tax laws such that the taxpayer can easily identify with and understand what they are saying, not using technical jargon that will make them complex for them. Once tax process or law is complex, it makes the compliance a bit difficult. Then number 7, the Revenue Authority of tomorrow that you need to take note is participation and the voice. There must be, the taxpayer must be given a voice. We must listen to them, hear what they want, what exactly, how do they want us to serve them? How do they want the Revenue Authority to serve them better? And also, we must engage in enlightenment, a lot of enlightenment and taxpayer education. This makes it easy for the taxpayer. One will know where the shoe is pinching them and where they need help, and where we can also support them to comply easily. And lastly, for the revenue of tomorrow is the capacity and inspire leadership. Regular training for the tax official is very important. Training, learning, and unlearning your old skill is something that cannot be overemphasized. Then leadership is very key. Competent and inspiring leadership is key, and I can say that because today we have a leader in the Federal Revenue Service, Muhammad Nami, who have transformed the place and keep transforming, who have listened to staff, listened to taxpayer, and also doing a lot of collaboration on his 4-pillar goal that he has set in on data-centric institution, reforming the institution, customer-centric institution, and collaborating. He's doing all these 4 things, and the FRS is experiencing great transformation that we must use as an example every time we speak about revenue of tomorrow. And in conclusion, I have just 4 slides here to speak to. We must not forget the trajectory of the reform, have the history of the reform. What are the reform that the Revenue Authority have embarked upon? What exactly are they looking at? Then number 2, they need to transcend it for quality service delivery. Whatever we do, if we are unable to deliver quality service to the general taxpaying public, then we are not boosting the taxpayers' morale at all. So the Revenue Authority of tomorrow must more constantly bear in mind that it is in existence because the taxpayer is there. And if the taxpayer is there, the taxpayer should be his focus. That way, we can then say we are boosting the taxpayer morale. Then we should not forget digitalization, which has become inevitable in the process of owing a rapid rate of adoption. What exactly, which type of digital technology do we need that fit into the revenue of tomorrow? What are the business world of tomorrow? These are things that the Revenue Authority of tomorrow must consider. And lastly, Revenue Authority of the future, we need to continue to invest in the right digital technologies. Some technologies are outdated. You must also keep up to date in the business world, so that you be in line with in sync with what is happening. And I will close by also quoting an American investigative journalist of the 20th century, Lincoln Steffer, who said, "I have seen the future and it works." And to me, I want to add, yes, I have seen the future. It is better than today. So with these few points, speaking about the Revenue Authority of tomorrow, I want to thank you all for listening to me and this opportunity to also share these few points that I've just put forward to every one of us. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you so very much, sir. That was a really fantastic time listening to you. I agree with both you, Stephens, that I have seen the future through your speech today, and I agree with you that the future works and it is indeed better. I had such a good time learning from you, and I speak for both myself and for all of our audience from across the world that No other speech, no other presentation could have been more apt than yours. I like the fact that you took us on a trajectory of where we've been, where we are, and what is possible, and you addressed what needs to be done. Thank you so very much, sir, for that
Thank
wonderful speech. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. I'm sure that you had a fantastic time listening to our guest speaker. And if you are like me and you listen while he had addressed the role that technology plays in building the revenue authority of the future. And that takes me to role technologically tax is concerned. And then I'll do well to quickly introduce our panelists for today to you. The first person for today's panel, in the panel that addresses tax and technology, disruption, challenges, and solution, is Mr. JD Choi, CPA, who is the CEO of Tax Technologies Incorporated. Um, I'll read quickly the profile of Mr. Choi to you while I bring him on to the event today. Like I said, JD Choi is the CEO at Tax Technologies Incorporated. He is a leader in tax technology and a national tax expert. Under his direction, Tax Technologies Incorporated built Tax Series, an integrated corporate tax software that is used by several multinational companies today. JD's passion for building a comprehensive tax software solution is based on years of experience as a tax technology expert and his vision for the development of a comprehensive global tax reporting tools. JD's foresight into the rise of global reporting requirements, such as global provision reporting and global income inclusion calculations for UX tax liability, such as the GILTI and the OECD's country by country reporting. He has This has caused him to lead the development of a comprehensive worldwide data technology computation and reporting software. JD has published several articles on tax technology issues that are still relevant today. For example, he shared his vision for the future of tax technology in Tax Technology Today and Tomorrow, Capital Market CIO Outlook. He has also warned companies about the use of spreadsheets and technology debt in his article, End User Computing and Technical Debt in Taxation, that was published in the CIO Review. JD has also been invited to share his views on employees working remotely that was imposed during the COVID pandemic. He shared the stage at the World Knowledge Forum 2020 with renowned author Bruce Daisley, who wrote the book The Joy of Work, and discussed his experience dealing with the implementation of employees working remotely during the field of work. Ladies and gentlemen, if your hands, okay, so what I've been advised to do is to introduce panelists to you, and then we'll bring them in one after the other. So the second panelist of this panel session is Mr. Graham Tilbury. I'm sure that you've heard of JD Choi and you're wondering, okay, so what can be better than this? I'll bring to you Mr. Graham Tilbury in a short while. So who is Graham Tilbury and what has made him a voice to be able to speak to you today on this tax conference 2022? He's the managing director of FTI Consulting UK. It's a consulting firm based in London, and it leads FI's consulting, tax technology, and transformation advisory service. Graham has worked significantly with businesses on a wide variety of tax technology projects, including tax technology consulting, tax automation, tax data analytics, tax AI, and online filing. He has over 30 years of experience and he has worked in both practice and industry in the UK, the Europe, and all across taxes, delivering solutions using a wide variety of technologies, both building custom solutions and implementing third-party software. Before his experience, before his work with FTI Consulting, Graham spent 2 years providing internal technology solutions within Huawei Global Finance. He was the head of tax data analytics for PwC in Switzerland. He was a senior solution consultant in tax and accounting products. Thomson Reuters MEA, was a tax technology senior manager at KPMG, Deloitte, and Arthur Andersen. If you're like me, you're like, wow, he has had experience in literally all the big fours, all the names, all the who are who's, where taxation is required. And ladies and gentlemen, that is Mr. Graham Tilbury. Our third panelist on this panel session is Mr. Gareth Harrison. And I'm sure you're listening to the profile. Thank you so very much for staying with us. I was going to introduce to you Gareth Harrison before that interruption with the technology. Gareth Harrison is the head of tax at Ethel Africa PLC, a FTSE 100 listed group which operates across 14 markets in sub-Saharan Africa. The group has over 118 million customers, providing telecommunication services and mobile money services. It is the continent's second largest telecommunications operator. Gareth is based in Nairobi, Kenya, where he has lived with his family for over 10 years. He is originally from Manchester. His career in tax started with Arthur Andersen, where he qualified as a chartered accountant and chartered tax advisor. Alongside industry roles for AstraZeneca and Barclays, Gareth also spent 5 years with KPMG UK and Qatar, plus 3 years with PwC Kenya as a tax director. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our third panelist on this panel session today, Gareth Harrison. The fourth panelist is Richard Amohene, who is a partner as WTS Noblefield. So, who is Richard? And I'm just excited as to the people that we have on this panel because it looks like we've brought out the big guns for this one, right? So, I'll quickly introduce Richard to you, and I'll also bring on the other panelists, and we can enter into this panel session right about now. Okay, so I'll skip the introduction for Richard, and I'll move on to Mr. Fred Oyetayo, who is a software developer and lawyer. And I'm sure you're wondering, okay, software developer and lawyer, what is the place for that in this presentation? If you stick with me long enough, you'll find out for yourself. Um, and our moderator for today is Mercy Frank, who is a breakfast show host and Silverbed Television and Silverbed News 24. The panel chair for today is Mr. Graham Tilbury. Stick with me and we'll be right back. Oh, Mercy, thank you so much for coming. It's so good to see you. Um, hey, thank you very much, Graham, for joining. Thank you, JD, as well. Thank you for joining. So over to you, Mercy. I'll allow you, do your thing, and I'll be out of your faces.
All right. Thank you so much, Funke, for that brief introduction. I'm pretty excited at this opportunity to speak about issues that affect both the government and the citizen at the same time. We're supposed to expect more of our panelists that will be joining us, which is supposed to start at 12:45 West African time. So probably when we start with the introduction, the others would join us. So glad to do this with every one of you. So let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from Lagos, Nigeria, where I am speaking from, a place where it is raining cats and dogs. It is an honor for me to be moderating this session that focuses on tax and technology, disruption, challenges, and solution. In this age of disruption in practically every sector of the economy, it is important that we have this conversation on tax. These three-letter words can make or break. It is the very thing that most times government and citizens do not see eye to eye on. One party's life depends on it, while the other party evades it if the opportunity arises, and especially if he can get away with it. Well, I will not be doing the talking alone as we have a fantastic array of thought leaders with decades of experience in the industry that cuts across different continents, cultures, and geography. Experts who have been there and done that, especially with infusing tech into tax. So expect a rich and robust perspective and conversation today. Let me begin by introducing our esteemed panelists in no particular order. I'll start with the person who wears the hat of the panel chair, Graham Tilbury. Graham Tilbury is a managing director at FTI Consulting, based in London, and leads an FTI Consulting Tax Technology Advisory Service. Now, he has over 2 decades of experience working with businesses on a wide variety of tax technology projects, from tax technology consulting, tax automation, tax data analysis, tax AI, very important, and online filing in the UK and Europe. And Graham also has expertise in product customization and integration. He also creates an efficient business aligned solution and running tax process technology workshop and reviews, and creates and implements a tax technology vision for senior stakeholders. Now, he also sits on CIOT Management of Taxes Committee and the Digitization of Agents Strategy Committee, and has contributed to a number of HMRC tax technology subcommittees, and was a member of the Business Europe and VAT policy group. You know, there are some people whose profile just dwarfs you. So let's give that to Graham, who will be sitting as the chair. Welcome, Graham. But let's come to Nigeria, where Fred Oyetayo is the chief executive officer of Flexible, and he leads the design of Flexible service and the development of its core technology and products, as well as services on his board of directors. Now, he oversees the full range of different products on the Flexible platforms. He is a two-time TEDx speaker, has been recognized by platforms such as Forbes 30 Under 30, SME Africa's 25 Under 25, the Future Awards Africa Prize for Disruption in STEM category, a finalist at the ASO Villa Demo Day, I beg your pardon, organized by the Office of the Nigerian President and World Bank, and is listed on several other platforms, which time will not permit us to talk about. Another person we'd like to welcome is JD Choi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Please pardon me if I didn't. I'd like to learn. He's an international tax lawyer and a CPA from the United States. He's a leader in tax technology and an international tax expert. Under his direction, Tax Technologies Incorporated build a tax series that is an integrated corporate tax software that is used by several multinational companies today. Jada's passion for building a comprehensive tax software solution is based on years of experience in tax technology and his vision for the development of comprehensive tax reporting tools. He did publish several articles on tax technology issues, which you can take a look at when you go online. But let's take a quick trip to Ghana, where we have Richard Amohene, a chartered accountant, tax professional, and an economist with over 12 years of professional experience in auditing, tax, finance, and advisory services. Now, he is a tax partner at WTS Ghana. Uh, he has over 7 years of professional experience, and he is the author of an economics textbook and the key resource person on training on tax and accounting matters. But let's circle back to Nigeria, where Bidemi Olumide, popularly called Bidi, is a tax and legal practitioner and a technology enthusiast. Now, he is ably represented by Adeola Adefuye, an associate at Tax Aid, who provides creative and practical solutions to complex tax issues regularly, and provides also tax advisory services on diverse domestic and cross-border commercial transactions. I almost thought I was going to be the only blessed woman among men, but Adiola came to my rescue. It's great to have somewhat of a balance on this issue and also get a woman's angle on this conversation. A quick stop at the land vast with wildlife that is Kenya, where Gareth Harrison functions as the head of tax at Airtel Africa's PLC, an FTSE 100 listed group, which operates across 14 markets in sub-Saharan Africa with over 118 million customers. And they have a bragging right of being the continent's second largest telecoms operator. Originally from Manchester, his career in tax started with Arthur Anderson, where he qualified as a chartered accountant and a chartered tax advisor. Now, he has played industry roles for AstraZeneca and Barclays and spent 5 years with KPMG UK and Qatar. And he also has 3 years with PwC Kenya as a tax auditor. Now, with the intros done, I'll hand over the mic to the panel chair, Graham Tilbury, to set the scene of the discussion and take it up from there. Now, a quick one before Graham comes up. There will be an opportunity for panelists to answer questions. So please drop them, whatever question you have, in the comment section that is provided. Over to you, Graham.
Thank you so much, Mercy, and a pleasure to be here with such esteemed company. I just want to give a very quick overview because tax and technology has really changed fundamentally over the last 5 years, I would say. It's been part of the tax world for at least 40 years or more. But what we've seen recently is a huge acceleration in the use of technology and data by tax authorities, and that's across the globe. So in the past, tax was very much an after the event thought for a lot of large organizations, and also something that wealthy individuals came to at the end of a tax year. It's only really been people in employment in the last decades that have been taxed and had their tax affairs looked at every month or every week. That's changing now. Revenue authorities around the world are requiring much more data. They're requiring it much sooner. And that means that all organizations, whether individuals or companies, whether advisors or policymakers, we all now have to be much more aware of the challenges from digital transformation and find the right solutions, because governments need tax income for the benefit of all taxpayers, never more so than in the last year or two because of the global pandemic we've all been suffering from. So what I hope to find in the next 30, 40 minutes through conversation with my esteemed peers is to see where those challenges are coming from and to identify the right solutions, the right attitudes and behaviours that will carry us forwards so that we can all benefit from the taxes that are being fairly collected. So that hopefully is a good framing. And what I'd like to do is start off by looking at some of the challenges that we see around either automation or transformation and digitalization within the tax arena. So I'm going to start off by addressing a question through to JD, just to try and understand where we are with relationships, how it matters who is involved in supporting the transformation or the digitalization of a tax organization. Is that something you can address for me, JD?
Sure. Yeah. As you set the stage, the tax authorities have been getting smarter and smarter, and their decisions to get engaged more in the digitization of all the taxation, and also decision making based on the data has been growing rapidly in the last decade. The big question for on the side of the taxpayer, especially at the decision making level, is okay, what are the risks and what are really the what's involved in effective handling of the additional reporting and associated risk management, whether it is a BEPS 2.0 Pillar 1, Pillar 2, whether it is a U.S. GILTI calculation on a global income inclusion, whether it is a handling of the additional audit from a tax inspectors without border. These are all challenges that the executive. Now it is beyond tax executive. Actually, it's at the CEO level, CFO level, who has to make decisions on how to effectively mitigate the risk and handle these type of additional burden effectively and cost effectively, frankly, because the cost of administration has been going up and up and up. There are three key elements that the executives really need to look at: how to source the raw data elements so that they can utilize these generalized raw data elements to effectively address the specific requirements by different jurisdictions. Say, for example, you have intercompany transactions that are being characterized differently and reported differently across different jurisdictions, right? However, the raw data of intercompany transaction is the same. Whether you have a company A paying royalty to company B, that raw data is the same. You need to find that raw data and source it in a way that it can be used for multiple purposes. You have a Chinese related party reporting, Canadian related party reporting, U.S. related party reporting, whether it is looked through a BEPS 2.0 Pillar 2 adjustment for the related party dividends and whatnot. You need to source the raw data properly. And then you have to have a calculation mechanism to be able to handle all these idiosyncrasies of each jurisdiction, right? That's where normally people think of tax technology, but tax technology involvement starts from the beginning, sourcing of the data, and then calculation. And then another really big aspect that many companies are missing is attribute management. Say, for example, you have a losses that are being utilized for one purpose versus the other. You can take the losses, utilize your losses for UK tax purposes, but not for US tax purposes, for example. So these attribute maintenance of the attributes has to be taken into account. In order to do this effectively, you really need to have a technology, and you need to have a people. You need to have people who can manage this technology. And then not every company can have all these resources in-house. So you need to be able to partner with a technology service vendor who can actually provide you the right services, and you have to have enough in-house resources to handle these type of challenges. I mean, for example, you have been working with a big bank for last 17 years. The way that you build this relationship between the company and the vendor is by really starting small project and building the trusting relationship over time, right? We have worked with this particular company for the last 17 years, and we've grown from very small foreign tax credit project to now managing the entire worldwide data and risk management. So the companies at the C level, we really need to focus on how to effectively employ tax technology and how to grow the in-house resources and how to partner with the right vendors to be able to handle the challenges of today.
JD, I think that's brilliant. I think that there's a big theme here around the global use of data and the fact that we have so much information, but actually, because tax is still very much a national preserve, you do end up having to process things differently in different territories. And you absolutely need to get the right software and the right partners as an organization to help you deal with that. And those personal relationships really matter, and generating the trust so that an organization can get the best out of the tax system for the right tax to be paid in the right place.
Mhm.
Technology, though, it won't be successfully implemented unless the people that are adopting the technology have trust in it. Richard, I know that you've had experience with trying to roll out transformations and working with various partners locally. Is there something that you could add around that kind of trust and relationship of people to embrace technology?
Yes, yes, Graham. In technology is very key, and one thing that we got to know is that it's something that we can't do away with it. From experience, because we've had a traditional finance department, finance or tax department or tax implementers doing the old school manual way, at times, most of the times, we see implementation of technology to be a kind of an intruder or a way of bringing an external party into what we do. And the one question is that, what are you coming to do here? So one key thing, the challenge that I've noticed during my practice is that when we don't have a stakeholder involvement or stakeholder buy-in into the whole implementation processes. So when you want to do implementation of any processes in an organization, being the government or a private entity, you require the human resource of the existing entity or the government personnel. Now, if these people or this personnel do not buy in, they do not budge with what you are doing, you have a lot of frustration. So you have an experience where there was an implementation of a process, a very government, a big project, that the implementer does all that he thinks he knows technology wise for that to be successful, but it was not working. Just for one day for you to realize that someone has gone behind where the servers are, has cut a cable, and nothing is working for you. You think you are doing everything, but nothing is working because the people over there are always against you, your implementation, because they are thinking you are an outsider, you are not a tax person, you are not a finance person coming to take over our job. So one key thing to solve this is bringing a stakeholder onboarding process so that the people that you are implementing this technology for, they will have a buy-in, they will have that understanding that this product is for us. They are part of the processes. So you give them part of the job allocation and they are part of it, they are contributing to it. So they feel as part of it, contributing to this implementation process. And one thing we see is that in corporations, we see many who are trying to make the numbers. You want to make the numbers upfront. So you want to make the numbers in the sales, we want to make the numbers in our production, cut cost of production. But we also forget a lot of the time to invest in the what we call the back end side of our processes. So finance, tax, reporting are often seen as the back end. So you don't see a lot of investment in the technological side in terms of tax, as tax is concerned, to be able to venture into leading edge cutting technologies that will help in implementing or being more technologically inclined as an organization. So this is the second one. Then looking at the third one, which as Didi talked about, is data integrity. It's garbage in, garbage out. What you put in is what you get out. So if you do not have the right data, all other researchers have shown that where you have the wrong data going in, you have the wrong data coming out. And when you have the wrong data coming out, tax is not a silo process. You have always an interaction with the government or with an external party. And when they do not have a trust in your system, they will not budge, they will not take what your output. Because the whole intention is that the process is supposed to either to be automated so that we don't come in with a manual process again. And it has to come in a way that the end user, one who is validating it, should have a trust in the data that you are putting in. So having a substandard data in your technological implementation processes, it makes it very difficult for us to have integrity, for us to trust, because I'm supposed to trust what you are giving me. If I know that you are putting in the right in Ghana, we are supposed to file returns like withholding tax with the right with the tax identification numbers of the vendors. If I realize that your system doesn't even allow the right tax identification numbers to be provided in your system, then it means that all the returns that you are providing, you are allocating to the wrong vendors. And the intention is that at the end of the day, I'm able to also see at the other side what the vendors are also getting so that I can go and tax them. But because you are putting in the wrong data and I do not have a trust in it, your output as your returns, I can't take it. And it will defeat the whole purpose of implementing any kind of technology. So also working on the integrity of data that we are inputting in implementing any kind of technology or any kind of platform, any kind of tax system is very key in achieving, in resolving the challenge or disruption that's around this.
Richard, you are so right. I think that the trust element is key, but you've got to have the right data going through the system. Otherwise, you do certainly suffer that garbage in, garbage out issue. You've got to take people with you. The best system in the world is not going to improve an organization or a taxpayer if the people don't want to use it. And so you have to make sure people don't feel threatened, but that they come with you on that journey. And it doesn't matter if people are afraid of technology or afraid of robots, whatever it is, we need to be able to address those fears, and we need to be able to work with people and make sure that they are engaged. Though, of course, there may be more to it. I think another area that we see a lot of is concerns over technological literacy and whether or not people feel that they are able to cope with the solutions that they are being offered as a taxpayer. Now, of course, JD and Fred are both involved in creating software solutions. Fred, if I turn to you, how do you find your end users' experience of technology, and do you have to address concerns that some of those people don't have the literacy with technology they need, and how does your product address that?
Thank you for that, Graham. I think literacy, tax literacy is really a big deal, most especially in this part of the world, where a lot of people don't actually want to pay tax, no matter how easy you are trying to make it possible for them to. So the bottom line is, number one, they don't want to pay tax. And number two, if you are trying to build a system to make it as easy as possible for them to pay tax, they need to see reasons to, they need to be able to use it seamlessly. They need to be able to find they need to find a way to use it not to complicate things. And once they're seeing probably a particular estimated calculation for how much they actually meant to pay before filing their tax returns, they can see how accurate it is. So most of the technology, or most of the platforms we built over the years for our clients have revolved around ensuring that it's extremely easy for them to use. That is number one, the bottom line. And number two is to explain how it is to use the system, and also explain how it is to make payments, probably after filing their tax returns, to see the need to do this. So, but tax literacy over the years has probably been one of our biggest problems when we build for clients, because most of them depend on to ask follow-up questions. They want to pay minimal tax. They want to find ways to find. They want us to develop systems to find a way to pay a very low tax. So, but generally, I think we are doing a lot around that right now. We are trying to build a seamless process for users to work with. So, but I believe as time goes by, people will get to appreciate that technology is actually set to make things easier for them and not to complicate things on the long run.
Thank you, Fred. And I agree that there are some particular issues in Africa, but I think technological illiteracy is all around the globe, not just in Africa. JD, do you see other similar experiences with having to try and focus on educating and upskilling users of solutions? You're dealing globally with people. How is it from your perspective?
Yeah, most tax people think that they are technology literate when they can solve their problem using Excel spreadsheet, which is really actually causing more technology debt, because they don't have a cohesive vision from beginning to the end. Say, for example, you collect a piece of data. You can collect a piece of data in Excel, by email, and then you can transform that data from one to another, multiple processes. It actually causes tremendous inefficiencies, yet they think that they have solved the problem. That is where this technology illiteracy comes into play. Most tax people think that by getting the returns and these reporting done, they think that they have solved the problem. However, the built-in inefficiencies can only be solved by someone with a greater vision of how the data can be managed properly, how the calculation can be managed. Say, for example, instead of using the Excel file, you can actually create XML schedules that someone inputs. The data will automatically flow to different processes, right? This is a difference between a employment of one technology versus the other. Most tax people are not technology literate to be able to make that technology decisions. Yet CEOs and CFOs who are relying on tax people to make that technology decisions are making error in decisions because they think that because tax people think that they have the literacy that is needed for technology decision making. However,
I think we probably can come on to how we improve that level of technology literacy in a little bit. Apologies for cutting across you, JD, but I've not spoken with Gareth yet, and I want to make sure I'm bringing everyone into the conversations. So I know, Gareth, you're not a technologically illiterate person, but if we do have people that are technologically literate, if we've got the right automation processes in place, we still need to think about how easy is it to pay our taxes, whether that's as private citizens or as organizations. And we also need to think about how costly it can be to comply with those regulations. So I wonder if there's something you could tell us about how easy it is for a company with operations in most of Africa to be able to pay its taxes, and how expensive it is to comply?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I mean, we can talk about taxpayers themselves automating and introducing technology solutions provided by, the organisations represented on the panel here. But we've got to remember that the tax authorities themselves are introducing technology to suit their own processes and their own methods of collection. And what we found in the last 18 months is that what they're implementing is not necessarily taking account of how taxpayer systems work, and therefore the interface between the taxpayer and the tax authority can become more difficult, and that the technology solutions being introduced are not improving the process, they're not improving the collection, they're not making it easier for taxpayers to pay their taxes, to file their returns. We've got long-running projects in places like Niger and Uganda where we're having to work month after month with the tax authorities to resolve issues that have been created by the technology solutions that the revenue authorities want to implement, that they've done without consulting in advance the key stakeholders, i.e. the taxpayers. So I think there is a drive across the board to introduce technology. And I think, in many ways, that's the right thing to do, because introduced correctly and used correctly, it can definitely enhance the process. Unfortunately, not everybody's working with the same agenda, and perhaps some of the tax authorities are bringing in solutions and the solutions providers are not helping them along the way from end to end. In the same way, let me go back to what JD said when he was supporting his client, and has taken them on a journey over 15 plus years from a small start to a big project where they are now. I feel as if maybe the tax authorities not necessarily getting the same support on implementing their solutions. It's understandable, of course, that they want to make the process of tax collection more efficient, but to do so, they need to understand that the challenges that that's throwing out for taxpayers, groups like us who want to comply, who want to pay the right amount of taxes on time, it's actually becoming more difficult for us and more costly to do so.
Mercy, if I can just pull you back into this, are you surprised to hear people saying that it's becoming more difficult and more expensive to be a compliant taxpayer because of the technological changes we are seeing from tax authorities?
At this point, I really do wish Adeola was here to talk, because she is in the industry. She's the expert. She feels the pulses of people. But I'd speak from the perspective of a journalist and somebody who is on the field, who asks questions and even ask experts questions about this issue. It will boil down to one thing, which is the trust that people have, not basically on the technology, but on the government and the government's ability to utilize the tax that people are paying to bring about development into society. That's one very big issue, and one complaint that's resonating among Nigerians. I think Fred Oyesayo is here, he's in Nigeria, and he definitely would agree with me on this particular issue. And as regards to technology, I think it's due to some infrastructure gaps that we have here in Nigeria, as we would say. Broadband penetration, yeah, that's number one. Digital illiteracy is a very big issue, right? The cost of digital devices as well. So people can afford, people in underserved communities, people in rural communities can afford, due to their own economic standards, status, can afford the use of the USSD phone, the small phones. The name we use here is called Palasa. That's the local word we use here. The Nigerians would understand what I'm talking about. That's the word we use here. We use that phone and just have access to the internet. Yeah. So tell you, if you want me to be able to probably go to click on a particular link to fix some of my tax issues, getting a smartphone is pretty expensive right now in Nigeria. Due to many issues. The exchange rate is one issue. the increase in the prices of digital devices based on the scarcity of chips, as we see in the tech industry, is another issue. So put those things together. I would agree with you to an extent. I'm not surprised that it's expensive.
I very much appreciate that perspective, Mercy. I think I can see we've had a couple of questions in from the audience
Absolutely.
that are very much in the same space. Solomon's asking, if I see corruption, if I see disincentives from the tax authority, then why do I want to pay my taxes? I see Alicia has also said that there needs to be clear help from policymakers and from the providers of the technologies to make it easier. So I think if you look at those all together, what people are saying is they are happy to pay their fair share, but you've got to make sure that there's transparency in the process so that you know the tax money is being used properly and that it's easy to pay those taxes, that it's not expensive for you to have to deal with that, whether as an individual or as an organization. And I guess a lot of this comes back to the different stakeholders, the tax authorities and the revenue authorities themselves, the owners of businesses. You've got potentially company registrars. You've got a lot of different pulls and pushes. Richard, I'm just going to pick on you at this point. If we're thinking about the ease and the cost of compliance, and then how revenue authorities can either make this easier or harder for people, and what they can do to encourage or be transparent, what do you think would be a key thing to change with the revenue authorities?
Okay, Graham. One of the good indicators of a good tax policy or a good tax system is ease of payment or ease of administration. And with regards to ease of payment, and that's one of the key indicators to assess or to know that we have a good tax system or good tax policy. And currently, especially from the COVID period, we've all come to realization that technology is the way to go, and there's no turning back with regards to it. Then, therefore, we have to make it more easy to make a payment. There's no need for a technology if it doesn't make simple for one to make payment, and there's also no need to use technology if I have to repeat the manual process again. So I had a similar experience where I filed returns online, and you go to the revenue authority and you ask you, give me a hard copy, and I ask the question, so what's the reason of implementing that taxpayer portal? Because if I have to use that and come and do repetition of the manual processes, then there's no need to do that, and it doesn't serve it right for me as a taxpayer or a consultant to have ease around with the tax system. So to make easy of payment, one of the things that when the revenue authorities are implementing their technology or their systems, they should also do that in mind with the taxpayers or the corporations. Just as Gary said, the revenue authorities they've implemented systems, and you realize that they did not think of what is happening on the ground with regards to the corporation side of it. So because the whole intention is that we want to automate the system, we want to remove the manual process out of it. So at a point, I should be able to link my system with the corporations to be able to sync, to pick the information from their system and analyze at my end. And if you implement systems without looking at what the corporations are doing, then it's also going to make it very difficult in the long run, and there will not be any need to have implemented that technology. So one, we have to, in the implementation, we need to look at what the taxpayers are doing to be able to sync our systems with it. Then the second side is that the corporation, when you're also doing, we also need to look at what the revenue authorities are also doing. Because if you also implement your system in silo, you end up having a situation that you can't also sync your systems with that the revenue authority. So you go in, you don't go in for advanced systems, advanced software programs that will be able to sync with the system of the revenue authorities. And because, of course, you go for one that you think is much more cheaper, that will not be able to sync with the system. So when the revenue authority begin to synchronize the system, to automate the systems, you'll be left out. The issue of, to also make it more easy, we also need to do our best to remove the manual processes within the system. So if I am going technology, I'm going the system based, then it should be full 100%. We shouldn't power run the manual and the automated system. So if I file my returns on the systems, I should be able to make payment on the system directly. Fortunately, in Ghana, we are able to file your returns even as midnight, and you'll be able to do the payment by bank transfer, and it makes it quite easy for you. But if I have to file returns, then walk to the bank to go and do payment, it makes it still cumbersome, and still the old goals is still around to hunt us. So with regard to ease of payment, it is important that we remove all the manual processes within it. And one thing is that we also need to concentrate on the tax data, on the data management rather than the process management, because as an organization you want to have a process flow that suits your system, or the revenue authority, you want to have a process flow that suits your system, forgetting that the technology is based on data. So if your system is not based on data, that at the end of the day you have a more credible data to be able to analyze or be able to sync through the system to automate the system, it will make payment quite difficult. So Graham, we need to do our best to take out the manual system from the processes, and also concentrate on the data management to make more easy to make payments.
Richard, I think you've really hit a good point there, that you can make things so much easier for taxpayers, and you can also create fewer opportunities for corruption and misadministration if you can do everything all in that one place, and if technology can facilitate it. I think another point we haven't finished on yet was around the early discussion with technological literacy. I know that in some places we are seeing tax people being encouraged to learn more about technology. The tax qualification I hold is with the Chartered Institute of Taxation, and I know that the CTA qualification is now a global qualification that is used by institutes not just in the UK, but also in Africa and in Asia and in Europe. And they are launching a diploma in tax technology in the next couple of months. Do we think that that kind of level of certification around tax and technology is going to be useful going forwards? I know JD was going to talk a bit more about technology literacy, but I'll just ask Gareth first. From a corporate perspective, do you see the idea of additional training and qualifications around technology for tax people? Is that going to be useful?
I mean, briefly, yes. There's a place for tax technology experts, clearly. Do we all have to have it? No, we're not. We don't all have to be experts in every field of tax. So I think there is a specialism emerging in tax technology, which I certainly think is going to be suitable for some, but it's not required for all. So I think, yes, there's a place for it, but will we all have to have it? I don't think so.
Thanks, Gareth. And JD, I've seen a question coming in from Simeon about there being issues in Nigeria with tax cases having been stopped, maybe because of tax technology issues, or because the tax operatives can't use the technology there. So I guess, your systems could be used by people in corporates, but systems like yours can also be used by people on a tax authority side. So do you see the idea of a tax qualification in technology being as relevant or potentially more relevant for government authorities?
I think so because the right now many people kind of call themselves tax technologists. And there's no really standard by which the technology people can be qualified. First, they have to be exposed to certain technologies that are relevant. Say, for example, many countries have created this web portal for tax reporting and tax payment, which is horrible way to actually handle because you have to enter each data element one at a time. Like in the case of China, it takes 5 minutes to just enter one withholding tax. It's
Yeah.
unbearable, and I'm pretty sure that that similar kind of standard had been employed across different countries because similar vendors have made it. So it is important to have some standard be imposed on people who are actually employing and developing these technologies. Okay? So from that perspective, I think it is very helpful to have certain certification, and I think there should be a global initiative to kind of share knowledge across the technologies between taxpayers as well as the tax administrators.
JD, I think that's a very, very good point. And I think part of our issue is that with tax authorities, they don't have an incentive. They can just request their citizens to have to comply, no matter how terrible their technology is. It's really hard for a taxpayer to complain about the tax authorities making life difficult. And I think it's conversations like these that will really help us to move the agenda forwards. Now, I know we're getting very close to the end of our session. Apologies if we've not managed to get around everybody. I've seen there's been a flurry of questions coming in the comments as well. I don't know, Mercy, if we can pick up
Yes.
those comments
Yes.
and
Yes.
maybe get back to them after the session.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
We're not going to have
Absolutely.
time otherwise. If I can just extend my thanks to my fellow panelists, it's been a really interesting discussion. I wish we could have had longer, but hopefully it's given everybody on the call a good flavour of what's happening in terms of the use of technology to address the issues that we do see around tax. And very much grateful to Mercy for being able to shine a light on what's going on, and I will leave it to her to conclude the session today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Graham, for doing a fantastic job. I want to say a very big thank you to all the people that commented. I sent a question from Simeon to Timilani, Adikon B, Elisha, and Rance Ferrets, that's what you call yourself. With David Kilimo, thank you for joining this conversation. And to all our panelists, you've done a fantastic job. The conversation doesn't end here. Reach out to any of the panelists who feel like they want to ask a question through social media and whatever platform that they are available online. Well, it's a wrap. It's a wrap on the conversation. We wish we had more time to keep talking about this issue that interests everybody. But my name is Mercy Frank, and this is where I'll hand over the stage to the host, Funke, for the rest of the conference. The floor is yours, Funke.
Thank you so very much, Mercy, for that. That was really an interesting panel session. A very big thank you to all of our panelists on behalf of Tax House. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on today to share from your wealth of experience and knowledge over the years. Thank you so much to the panel chair for what was such a beautiful time discussing tax and technology. This is still the Taxpayers Conference 2022, and we are glad that you're here. On behalf of the panelists, I would also like to apologize if we didn't get to your contributions or to your questions for the session. We have time constraints and we're unable to take everyone, but I mean, we're happy that you've had such a good time today, and you've had such a good time here today, and I mean the conversations continue even from here. You'd like to, engage, you can engage any of the panelists. You can reach out to them on LinkedIn or any of the social platform where they are available. And I'm sure that they would also extend that courtesy to you if you mentioned that, you are at Taxpayers Conference 2022. So that was a very beautiful time. And then we'll quickly move on to the next thing on the agenda for today, which is we'll move on to the next panel session. I'm excited particularly about this session because we have quite young people on the panel, and I mean you're wondering what is the role of tax clubs where taxation and boosting taxpayers' morale is concerned. So we'll be having a panel session of tax club presidents from different universities from across um, Nigeria. So I'll move on to quickly introduce our panelists for the breakout session that we have tagged Role of Tax Clubs in Boosting Taxpayers' Morale. Do tax clubs have a role where boosting the morale of taxpayers is concerned? Just stick with me and we'll examine that in for a minute. And our panelist for this session is the moderator for this session is Mr. Michael Okuwobi, who is the president of the Tax Club of Lagos State University. But before we move on to this breakout session, we have a video, right? We had an interview session for Professor Friedman, which was done by Nana of Tax Notes, and we'll quickly play a bit of that video for you to enjoy. We don't have the time to play the full length of the video, so we'll give you an abridged version, but you can also head on to YouTube to watch the full video. Please stay with us, we'll be right back.
Professor Friedman, it is such a delight and honor to be able to speak with you today regarding your tax career. I mean, I think when people think of corporate taxation or international taxation, your name is amongst the top of the list as a giant in this area. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm not sure about all of that, but it's very lovely to be with you all.
So let's start discussing your road to Oxford. My first question for you is, why did you decide to specialize in corporate tax, international tax? What particularly drew you to the area, and what do you love about it?
Well, when I was in practice, I really enjoyed tax because it was an area where I could get my teeth into something very meaty. Many other areas, because I was a solicitor rather than a barrister, it was really a lot of work that was with standard forms or dealing with clients, and I preferred not to be with the clients but to be with the books, to be honest. And so in tax I felt I was a bit more left alone, so I developed a bit of an expertise in tax in a small firm when I was training, and then moved to Freshfields, which is a big London city firm, where I went to the corporate tax department, and that's where I began to learn about corporate tax. So I didn't study tax at university. It wasn't available when I was at university, and therefore I feel I've come a very hard way to tax, but I really learned it in practice.
That's fantastic. And I think your story tracks with many other stories I've heard from other tax practitioners, that they just kind of fell into tax, but that the occasion was a happy one for them. So my next question for you is, what prompted you to enter academia from Freshfields?
As I said, I liked books a lot more than people, and I was better suited, I think, to an academic career. It was also pretty tough in practice when I was in practice in the early 1980s or late 1970s. I was the only woman in the department for a long time. It really was very, very hard. I couldn't see myself having a family and staying in practice at that time. Now I look back on it, I think, maybe I shouldn't have given in, but it was honestly very hard without any other women. And but I don't want to make that a negative story, because I also positively wanted to study tax and to be learning about tax, and I felt I could do that better as an academic anyway.
I hear that. Now, within your experience at Freshfields, I mean, from your observation, do you believe that you were the only woman because women weren't encouraged to enter tax, or that they felt intimidated by the area, or that they weren't encouraged to practice tax law in a corporate setting?
It honestly wasn't only tax. There were very few women solicitors in big city firms anyway in those days. I don't think tax is particularly discouraging, and I think actually many women do like tax and are very good at tax. So I don't think that was the problem. I think it was a more general problem of big city firms, and the whole setup was not and still is not really very encouraging for women, particularly women who want to have a family, unfortunately.
Right. Yes.
It's a lot better than it was, and great strides are being made, but could be better.
I hear that. Now, you were definitely instrumental in making tax at Oxford what it is today. So I'm hoping that you can walk me through the process of deciding to create the two big programs that you had a hand in. So the Center for Business Taxation, and then also the Master of Science in Taxation.
Okay, well, I came to Oxford in 2001, so I'd already been teaching tax at the London School of Economics for 20 years by the time I went to Oxford. The opportunity came up to apply for a chair in Oxford. The chair was sponsored by KPMG. They were quite forward-looking, I think, in believing that there wasn't enough tax teaching going on in the UK. I applied in the normal way. I was not a KPMG employee or anything like that. I was it was all completely above board and done according to normal academic rules. So the name KPMG did not fetter me in any way. It was simply that they were very generously providing the funding. Having got to Oxford and having been elected to the chair, and it was the first statutory chair that any woman in the law that any woman had held in the Oxford Law Faculty, so I was quite proud of that. I then went about building on what was already there. So we already had a personal tax course in Oxford being taught by very able colleagues, so I left that alone and I focused on corporate tax and introduced the corporate tax course onto the BCL, which is Oxford's flagship graduate degree for lawyers. But that was limited because we really only had space for 2 options in tax on the BCL, and many people applying for the BCL didn't want to do tax, and I didn't have any kind of control of how many students I had year on year. Gradually we built up a group of us. So first I was somewhat on my own, although with these other colleagues who were mainly property lawyers who were also teaching personal tax. But we then managed to recruit other tax people, my colleagues Glenn Lutzenheiser and Dr. John Vella, and once we had a critical mass of people, it was possible to think about putting on the MSc in tax, and that was very much helped by having by that time the Centre for Business Tax, which I had been one of the people who set that up, raised the funding and got that set up at the Syed Business School. So we then had economists as well. And I really think to teach tax well, you need...
Thank you very much for staying with us. That was the interview by Nana of Tax Notes that we had with Professor Friedman. Anybody who is anything, or anybody who is slightly interested in taxation knows who Professor Friedman of Oxford University is. All right, so we'll move on to the breakout session, which speaks to what the role of tax clubs is in boosting taxpayers' morale. So do you think that tax clubs of universities have one role or the other to play where boosting taxpayers' morale is concerned? Stick with me and you'll find out at the end of this session. So I'll quickly introduce our panelists for this session to you. Our first panelist for this session is Samuel Perret-Well, who is the president of the Tax Club, University of Jos. He's also the president of Nigerian Universities Accounting Students Association. You're welcome, Samuel Perret. Our second panelist for this session is S.A. Opeyemi. He is the president of the Tax Club at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. He's also the vice president, Association of Taxation Students, ANTAS. Our third panelist is Feyifoluwa Adeosun. Feyifoluwa is the president, the Tax Club, Obafemi Awolowo University. I mean, I have to stop and do this for the culture because I am partly biased the way Obafemi Awolowo University is concerned. So Feyifoluwa, you're welcome. Our fourth panelist is Lota Chukwu Udenta, who is the president, the Tax Club, University of Nigeria. And our fifth, but not the last, or not the least panelist is Kofoworola Omowale, who is the president, the Tax Club, University of Ibadan. Our moderator for this session is Michael Okuwobi, who is the president, the Tax Club, Lagos State University. Please, a resounding welcome to all of our panelists. You're welcome as we take this breakout session on what the role of tax clubs is, where boosting taxpayers' morale is concerned. We look forward to such a vibrant, energetic, and beautiful discourse with all of our panelists. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you to every single person who has taken out time to join us at the Taxpayers Conference 2022. Our moderator is Michael Okuobi. Okay, and I see that he has joined us. Over to you, Michael. You have the floor. You're still muted. Michael, please try to unmute. It shows that you're muted from my end. Thank you for sitting still, everyone. I'm sure that we're going to have a beautiful time on this session today. I think Michael is having some technical glitches. Just give it a minute or two. I'm sure that he'll be back with us. While we await Michael Okuobi to join us and take over the reins of this session today, I will, Lotachuku, what do you think really is the role of tax clubs where boosting taxpayers' morale is concerned?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Funke. Good afternoon, Kofo, Fini, Samuel, and Kwemi. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
All right, thank you. So, essentially, there are stakeholders that are very necessary in every tax environment, and then while we have the professional body as a stakeholder, that's the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, we also have a stakeholder in tax clubs, both in the tertiary level and in the secondary level. So essentially, what we do at Tax Club all over the country is to serve as an advocacy arm. You understand? As serve as an advocacy arm to assist, should I say, the agencies in charge for tax, whether it's at the federal level, which is the FIRS, or at the state level, which is the state Inland Revenue Service, educates people on the importance of paying taxes, basically. So our fundamental objective, or our fundamental goal, or our fundamental mission rather, is the mission of educating. A lot of people in Nigeria do not have appropriate knowledge as to the importance of paying taxes. Most people are convinced that there is no need to pay taxes just because there's no corresponding dividends of whatsoever taxes they pay or democracy. But then, as someone who puts it, taxes are the price we pay for civilized society. So what we do at Tax Club is we try as much as possible to have master classes, sensitization works, and all of that to educate the low income earners, if I may put it that way, as to the relevance of paying taxes. So you cannot take away the work we do at tax clubs all over the country from advancing tax advocacy in Nigeria. And then the very important, or should I say, the most important attributes is the energy we bring. Most of us are obviously still students, we are still young, we are youthful, and then we have a way of breaking down the complex tax laws and provisions into understandable bits, even in different languages. So really, we have very, very great work to do in the area of advancing tax and then also tax compliance. So that's just my bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for that. That was quite insightful. I'll move on to Fee Foluwadeosho. Um,
Okay.
Hi, Fee. How are you doing today? Good
Hi,
afternoon.
good afternoon, Funke. I'm very well. Thank you.
Good. I'm interested. What piqued your interest in tax? And I mean, what does it feel like, or how has it been being the president of a tax club?
Okay, so my interest in tax has been from when I was young. My dad is also a practicing tax consultant. So I've always known about taxes since I was a lot younger. But I found it really interesting when he always talked about why how a lot of Nigerians are very not interested in paying their taxes or even caring to know about it at all. Right. So as I got to Obafemi Awolowo University, there was a tax club which I joined almost immediately I got in, and I've served in different capacities before becoming president. So how has it been, the president? I think that just trying to channel your energy ideas that you think are very important in boosting tax compliance, thinking of new ways to create tax advocacy both within the campus and our immediate community, since in Osun State, the state capital, and other communities, right? Trying to ensure that we reach as many people that we can, and trying to ensure that also the students understand what taxes are, why it is important to pay taxes, and so that people do not leave the campus, because from the campus they go straight to the job market, and then that is where a lot of people now become totally apathetic towards it. So that people have good knowledge, and yes, trying to carry that vision is quite very exciting for me. Thank you.
Interesting. I like the fact that what you're doing is some sort of a catch them young initiative before we get to the level
Yes.
where people already get apathetic and they don't want to be involved. You're already doing
Yes.
that work from the grassroots. I think that you guys are the real G's holding it down, and it's just interesting. I'll move on to Kofo
Thank you.
Rola Omawale. Hi, Kofo. How are you?
Hi, Funka. Good afternoon.
Okay, so I'll ask my question to you before I then hand over to Michael to continue from where I stopped. It's good to have you back with us, Michael. So, if we say that we need to boost taxpayers' morale, it means that there's something wrong with the morale already. I mean, if it's not low, we wouldn't have to boost it, right? So, what would you say is the foremost problem? What has influenced the fact that we have gotten to this point where taxpayers have a very low morale? They don't want to hear about taxation, they don't want to pay their taxes. What would you say is the reason, or are the reasons for taxpayers' morale being low? and how do you think we can address these issues?
Okay, so we know that tax systems actually thrive on voluntary compliance from taxpayers. And the reason why the taxpayers' morale in Nigeria is really low is we can say is lack of trust. So over the years, there's been like a declining level of trust in the government. Because if you look at the social contract theory, the government is not fulfilling their own part of the contract, and state members of the society are not also willing to feel that theirs. Why? Because they feel that the government is really not doing so much with the money that they are paying to them. And like to
I
them, they see
apologize
that
for the interruption, Kofo Worola.
okay.
If you're not speaking, could you please mute your mic so that we don't have interference with the audio from Kofo Worola? So I would want every other person to please mute their mic so that I have only Kofo Worola's mic unmuted. Please go ahead, Kofo. Thank
Okay, so thank you. So like I said before, there's been over the years there's been like a declining lack of trust in government. And that's why like people don't want to pay their taxes. That's why there's really so much that's why there's low compliance. And as well, if you're looking at the social contract area as well, the members of the society are not willing to pay taxes. Why? Because the government is not fulfilling their own part of the contract, and members of society don't really see reasons why they should pay their taxes, which is one of the ways of fulfilling your social contract right. And how can we do this right? How can we ensure that how can we ensure tax compliance? How can we solve the problem of lack of trust? It's really by the government ensuring showing results. Show results. Let people know that pay my taxes and this is what you're using my money to do. Or people have like issues in the society. You're not listening to them, or you're not making ways to ensure that these things are done. Don't really see reasons why they should pay their taxes to you. So I'll give a very good example. So in tax law, we organize tax work. And so one of the works that we went for, we were speaking to one woman, and then she was saying that we should look at the road in front of her. It's not good. So this is like it's very evident. This is like an evident reason why she should not pay her tax. So yes, government should try to build trust by ensuring that they provide social amenities, attend to needs of the society, and fulfill their own part of the social contract.
Fantastic. So if I hear you clearly, Ms. Omowale, what you're saying is that taxpayers do not necessarily have a problem paying their taxes, but they need to know where the money is going to. If I'm paying for something, I want to see that it's going into social amenities, it's going into improving the quality and standard of living for people who are paying from their hard-earned monies. That was such a beautiful addition. That was such a beautiful contribution to the discourse. I would now do well to hand over to Michael, who I am glad is back with us. So if you please unmute, so that I'm okay that you're here and good. Over to you, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us back.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Funke. I really apologize for joining in late. I mean, MTN Read decided to pull one on me, and I'm back now. Thank you very much for staying tuned. And okay, so I was just taking up from where Miss Funke stopped, and I other things. Can you hear me perfectly?
So we had a freeze for like a few seconds. I'm not sure we heard you at all. I don't know.
Okay.
Network is really not smiling today, but
It's really not smiling at me. It's raining heavily here, and I think that's the cause. I'm really sorry. Okay, so yes, I heard one of the panelists talking about social contract theory, and she stated that it's one of the reasons why the people don't pay taxes. So I would ask Lotachuku, what do you think? How do you think we can, resolve this? How do you think the government can, ensure that the trust in the ecosystem is built up to in such a way that people would actually see where their taxes are going and know what the taxes are being used for?
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. My answer are in three keywords: transparency, simplicity, and convenience. That's how you build trust: transparency, simplicity, and convenience. In terms of transparency, people should be able to know, people who pay taxes should be able to know how much taxes are being paid, every year, who are the people paying tax? And I must commend the FIRS for one of the stuff they did recently during the tax week. They were able to publish the list of tax compliant companies for the past tax year and stuff like that. So that's very good. The relevant tax authority needs to be very transparent. Let us know people that are paying taxes. Let us know Let us know the amount that's being paid. Now, the second is simplicity and convenience, which are also the canons of effective taxation. You do not expect people to comply with things that are complex, right? And most times we have, a lot of people say the informal sector is being untapped and all of that. And then this informal sector are also dominated by people who are not fully literate, if I'm to put it that way. And they do not expect people to comply with things they do not understand. Most of the times the laws can be a bit complex. A tax law Investor of Nigeria, as far back as 2019, 2018, we're able to work on a project where we try to translate the personal income tax to an Igbo version. That's just one of our efforts at trying to simplify this tax law. So transparency, simplicity, convenience. These are three key things that will boost or that will close up that trust deficit that exists between the taxpayers and the tax authority, and in turn boost tax compliance and what have you. Thank you very much, Michael.
Well, amazing one, Lutachuku. Thank you very much. I particularly was interested. I got so interested when you stated that you simplified the personal income tax into an Igbo version. I mean, it's of interest to know how you guys were able to do that, but I'm sure we'll be able to talk about that in due course. Yes, that's a very interesting one. And to the listening audience, it means that, yes, the tax clubs are not just dormant stakeholders, they are relevant stakeholders who are actually taking active steps to ensure that tax administration in Nigeria works effectively. Thank you very much, Lutachuku. So I'll be directing my next question to S.A. Okpeyemi, the president of Tax Club Amodu Bello University, who also doubles as the vice president of the Association of National Tax Students in Nigeria. So Okpe, what would you, this question is that, so far in your administration as a tax club president, I think you've been a tax club president for a number of months or maybe years, and so far, what initiatives have you taken in your tax club as the president, as the leader of the tax club, to improve public awareness on payment of taxes?
Hi, good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Let me just start by this. Let's say, I'm from Amodu Bello University Zaria, which is predominantly based in North. You see, unlike the other colleagues from South and South, the knowledge of tax advocacy, tax compliance, it's more of like, okay, you're just working on a basis of something of existing before. Unlike North here, most of their things are done by their government on their behalf. Let me put it on a basis like saying that an average Hausa man does not even believe in personal income tax. That's why you can not see that the IGR of other states, let's say the 16 northern states, except the Kaduna, let's say Kaduna is even coming up during this L5 regime. So what that's really mean is that we really need to go down. I think in my last meeting, when I was in meeting with the Internal Revenue Chairman of Kaduna State, Dr. Saeed Abubakar. So we are talking about having a fellowship. We call it tax fellowship. It will be like an Erasmus program where the internship will cut across, let's say, different sectors of tax compliance within the state. Or let's say they have a collaboration with FIRS and the Internal Revenue, where students can learn not just the basic rudiment of taxation from the classrooms, but the practical aspect of the tax itself. However, you cannot advocate what you don't know. So my major focus now as a president, just at the first of this kind that's coming on timeline like this, is to make sure that I nurture these students to understand what is the rudiment of this tax itself before you start campaigning, because I won't lie to you, the level of campaign when it comes to tax advocacy, it's at zero level or at its ebb when it comes to North. So we really have a long way to go when it comes to northern part of Nigerian compliance to tax. And we're trying our best. We have a working tax program. We also have tax in action program. We've done a series of those programs where we do sensitizations and within the community of Samaru, where the ABU was located, and to address people about taxes. And got so good. I think these are intervention of federal road taxi that was just initiated by the FIRS. I think one of them cut across our border there in Zaria. I think it cut across from Zaria to Untua. So and then the thing was designed that this road was constructed by FIRS initiation of federal road tax. So I think the quality of the road, the majesty of the road, it's something that we can easily point out to that. You see this road, this is your money. So people really like, just like my colleagues have mentioned over time now, people really like that practical or physical aspect of their effort being commensurate with, okay, this is what I'm paying for. Definitely, that will be point of boosting their morale to comply more. And that's just the basic thing we do here in North. We're trying to educate them more at the first stage and before we proceed to the second stage of development. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you very much, Okpeyemi. I mean, great job there. So if I get you correctly, you stated that the first task for you as the tax club president of ABU is to increase awareness. I mean, when something is not known, you cannot advocate for it. So you want to increase awareness, and then the second stage will be to advocate for payment of taxes. Am I correct? All right, thank you very much. Great one. Thank you so much. So moving on. Okay, yes. So Samuel Perret Wall. Hi. So I have a question for you. And so seeing as tax club consists of students who do not have hands-on practical knowledge of tax law or hands-on practical knowledge of the administration of tax per se, right? Do you think that students alone can effectively advocate for tax payments, can effectively contribute to building taxpayers' morale? Do you think the tax clubs alone can do this? Okay, I lost her there. Okay, I Koforola, please bail us out here. Thank you. Did you get my question?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so tax clubs cannot. We already do that. We advocate for tax awareness. We create tax awareness. We educate people on taxation and all. However, we definitely need support of other stakeholders in the tax space. We need support of tax authorities, of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, and tax firms as well. So it's not something we can do alone. Also considering that we also need a lot of tax education ourselves, like what Okwe said. So we are not in the tax practice. So we definitely need tax professionals as well to teach us, to provide hands-on experience on tax practice itself. So we are not just looking at the theoretical aspect alone. We also look at the practical aspect. So we need the tax professionals because they're in the tax practice already. They're in the space already. They are doing these things every day. For us, we're just doing tax advocacy and awareness. So it's not something we can do alone. So we need support of stakeholders as well. We also need support of the FIRS. So FIRS sometimes they carry out trainings on how like the tax process works, how tax administration works, and all. So it's not something we can do alone. We definitely need support of all stakeholders in the tax space.
All right, thank you very much, Koforola. Yes, so for other stakeholders that are listening in on this session right now, we need your support. The tax clubs are soliciting for your support. We cannot do this alone. Tax advocacy goes beyond the tax clubs and beyond what the members of the tax clubs can do. So stakeholders, please partner with us to, boost the morale of the taxpayers in Nigeria, especially. Right. So thank you very much, Samuel Perret. Well, we are glad to have you back. So my next question is directed to Fiyinfolúwa Adeosun. All right. So Koforola was speaking about professional development and how that we do not have, hands-on practical experience as to tax administration per se, since we are not yet in the game. But how important do you think professional development is for members of the tax clubs across the country? How important do you think professional development is for members of the tax club across the country?
Okay, so thank you, Michael. We can clearly not speak to what we do not know, right? So we cannot advocate for what we do not have sound knowledge about, and that's why it's important that we develop ourselves in this field. So the CITN is a professional arm that offers courses, right? And you can become chartered in the field. So it is important that we seek knowledge, we continue to get practical experience, we attend trainings, we have lawyers, accountants, people in this field educate us, and that's one of the roles of the tax clubs, to be able to serve as liaison between the students and the professionals. So this educating us is very, very important, because we cannot speak to what we know. So as much as possible, we should register for trainings that the FIRS does, the CITN, so that we're well equipped to speak to these issues. And then when you have to talk to people that are clearly not interested, you have enough valid points to address these issues. And also, beyond just the professional development, we must also develop ourselves personally, right? So we cannot just know tax and not know how to speak about these things. So it is also important that we develop ourselves, like our public speaking and all of these other skills that are very important, right, in ensuring that we advocate for taxes as best as we can. Thank you.
All right, great one, Follower. Thank you very much. Yes, and I think I'm aware that the CITN gives a discount for students who want to, become chartered in, some of their courses. I think it's a 50% discount the last I checked. And I think we should also, for tax students watching, for tax enthusiasts watching, register for these courses, take professional courses, become a certified tax person yourself. Then that way you'll be able to, prefer solutions, viable solutions at that, to some of the tax problems we're facing in Nigeria. All right, thank you very much. So Samuel Perwo, are you with us now? Hi. Okay, I think.
Yes.
Okay, you're with us. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so my next question is for you. Yes, so considering, the fact that we are discussing taxpayers' morale in Nigeria, right? The informal sector is the sector where, there is a lot of ignorance as to payment of taxes. I think it's where we have the most tax evasions. And it's because, most of them do not know these things. I think that they do not necessarily have an idea of how to go about these taxes. And also, how do you think the tax clubs can help, improve the level of awareness and improve the level of tax compliance in the informal sector? How do we help the barbers, the tailors, the organizers, all these guys that are, just doing menial jobs and all? How do we help them, understand the importance of paying taxes? Samuel Perot, are you with us?
Okay. The ways that we can help the informal sector. Yes, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go.
Hello? I said one of the ways. Okay. One of the ways that we can help the informal sector, and I believe that in that have a little bit of knowledge of technology, and then there are people that have no idea at all about technology. And going to the aspect of those who have technology, there are associations of tailors, probably barbers, and all of that they form. And then along the line, like the drivers, they have their association. If the tax club can come in and then speak to the people involved, that is the people that are in charge of the association, and then see if there's a way that we can meet and then talk about taxation, tell them their rights, their responsibilities, everything that entails taxation. And also, I believe that one of the ways that tax club can come in to help the informal sector is to collaborate with the the state revenue houses, the authorities. Hello?
All right, thank you very much, Samuel Perret. Well, thank you so much for that. So we should, collaborate with the associations of persons in the informal sector to ensure that we take that awareness to them. Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
I said,
Thank you. Yes, I got what you said, Samapere. Oh, I did. Thank you very much. All right, so our last question for this session, for the paucity of time, and I would expect comments from. I would like to take the first comment from Kuforola and the last one from Tachiku.
Hi,
And so,
Michael. So before we take comments, it would not be nice that you're here and you didn't get to answer a question as well, because I know that I mean, much more than just running commentary and agreeing with what has been said, would like to also drink from your well of wisdom. And this is also to tell the people that are holding the network that you made it, and you didn't just make it by the thin air, that you also got to put in your contributions. So really, my question to you is, in your opinion, what do you think about tax clubs setting up tax clinics to aid like low income earners? You know that we have spoken about how people in the informal sector, for example, how we could reach them to buy their inclusivity, make them more aware, and to also boost their morale where paying your taxes is concerned. So what do you think about them? Because I mean, they are low income earners. Is it something that tax clubs can do, maybe in collaboration with people who are already in the field, who have the muscle, the financial wherewithal? Do you think it's financially sustainable? What do you think would be the impact of that, and then the financial sustainability as well? If you could really speak to that in 1 or 2 minutes.
all right, thank you very much, Ms. Funke. All right, so concerning tax clubs setting up tax clinics. So for me, I think that the tax clubs cannot do it alone. Looking at it from the financial perspective, I think that we do not have the financial wherewithal to set up a tax clinic. It has to be funded by an organization, mostly by authorities, by tax authorities or tax firms. So this is where the collaborations will come in, and would be able to synergize energy together. We can come up with the idea as a tax club, right? We can come up with the modalities of how it's going to work. We can come up with the places, the areas we want to reach. But when it comes to the finances, I don't think we can come up with that. Same as the tax clubs, the tax clubs are they basically consist of students and maybe some advisors here and there. So we would need law firms to partner with us to set up a tax clinic. We would need tax authorities to partner with us to set up a tax clinic. And I think, yes, it would be able to work if we collaborate with them.
Fantastic. You were just going to come and leave with that wealth of wisdom, but I'm happy that we got you to say a thing or two. Um, I believe that the comment section for this breakout session has been the most engaging so far. This is what you get when you bring young, vibrant, brilliant minds together on a panel session. And then the comment section has been so engaging. That's just been blowing up, boom, boom, boom. And then I'd like to also just give a honorable mention to every executive, whether the president, the vice president, you're in the leadership of one tax club or the other, of any institution, any university across the world, across Nigeria. Thank you so very much for your time. I love your energy. I love the vibrancy. And I mean, I believe that with this energy, with all of you together, coming together as a strong force, that a lot can happen. So, Michael, I'll give you the floor to take your comments from the panelists now.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Funke, for that. Unfortunately, we can't see the comment section, but we are saying hi to everyone there, and we hope that you've been able to learn a thing or two from our discussion today. So yes, I would like to take a comment from Koforola and Lotachiku. So Kofo will go first, and on how what do you think about this conference? Do you think do you think we need to host more conferences like this? What are the effects? Basically, just speak to it in about 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, of course, we should have more of these discussions to show our workings, right, as tax clubs, that we're also stakeholders in driving tax awareness and tax advocacy, to show a scorecard of things that we've done and also share things that we intend to do, and how tax authorities and other stakeholders in the tax space can partner with us.
All right, thank you very much, Koforola. Yes, so Lotachiku, let's hear from you.
I think we can only take one more comment because we need to go now. But we'll take one more comment and we'll call it a wrap. Thank you so very much, everyone.
All right. So let me first of all appreciate the organizers of this conference. It's been a great one. I know it started. I think this is not the first. I think this should be the second, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a good one. The different panel sessions and the panel topics have been very enlightening. Um, I just want to add that I expected the organizers of the conference to I've collaborated with tax clubs across the country prior to just aside from this breakout session, right? So I expected a kind of proper official collaboration, with the tax club so as to boost a publicity campaign and also involve a lot of students. I'm sure most students are only just tuning into this particular breakout session. But then if we're involved from the beginning, I'm pretty sure there would have been a lot of engagement, especially now that some students are on strike with the whole industrial strike action, all of that. So, but overall, I mean, it's a good one. I think this is the first of its kind, and it's happening virtual, meaning you can sit in your house in Lagos and listen to professor in Oxford speak to you. That's something that is worth applauding. So thank you very much for pulling this together. To the organizers, we appreciate you, and then we hope to have this moving forward. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you so very much, panelists, for your time. Thank you, Michael. Lutachukwu, it was a pleasure. Fiyifoluwa, thank you so much for your time. Koforola, thank you so very much. Esi Okoyemi and Samuel Perek, well, it was really lovely sitting and listening to you. Thank you so very much and enjoy the rest of your day. You could continue to follow up with the conference on YouTube. Thank you so very much and goodbye. All right, was that such an insightful and vibrant session or what? I promised you, I told you, I informed you that this is going to be a very vibrant, energetic, and informative session because that is what you get when you bring young people, young minds, vibrant energy into the room. So, quickly move on to the next panel session. And this panel session is going to be an amazing one because the topic really is what do taxpayers want? That's why we're here. It's the Taxpayers Conference 2022. What do taxpayers want? And then our panelists, I have Natalia, who is a partner of Finance Cruise Ltda. I have Professor Francine J. Lipman, who is the chair of this session. I have Mr. Ryan Alice. I have Mr. Olufemi Olamide. I have Mr. Ibrahim Abdullahi. I have Mr. Omar Ali and Langton Zadaba. And the moderator for this session is Sheena Ugra. I apologize if I have done a terrible job at calling your names. Um, okay, so I'll quickly introduce the session chair, the panel chair for this panel session, Professor Francine J. Lipman. Professor Francine J. Lipman brings to the Boyd School of Law an exceptional record as an accountant, a lawyer, a teacher, and a scholar. After working as a CPA in an international accounting firm and as the chief financial officer for a chain of retail jewelry stores, Professor Lipman turned to law, where she served as the editor in chief of the U.S. Davis Law Review and was recognized as an outstanding law student and a member of the Order of the Coif. Following a similarly sterling record in NYU's graduate law tax program, where she was a tax law review scholar, she practiced with O. Mulvaney and Myers LLP and Ariel and Manila LLP. Professor Lipman joined the faculties of Chapman University's School of Business and Economics in 2001 and the School of Law in 2003. Professor Lipman is an elected member of the American Tax Institute, the American College of Tax Counsel, the American Bar Foundation, and an editor and former committee chair of the tax section of the American Bar Association. She has been a visiting professor at UC Hastings College of Law and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. In 2016, Governor Brian Sandoval appointed, and in 2020, Governor Steve Sisolak reappointed Professor Lipman to serve as the Nevada Tax Commissioner. The Nevada Tax Commission consists of 8 Nevadians with various professional and business backgrounds. The commissioner supervises the overall administration and operations of the Nevada Department of Taxation. Professor Lipman has written extensively on tax and accounting issues for law journals, including the Wisconsin Law Review, Florida Tax Review, the Wisconsin the Virginia Tax Review, SMU Law Review, Nevada Law Journal, American University Law Review, Harvard Environmental Law Review, Harvard Latino Law Review, Harvard Journal on Legislation, The Tax Lawyer, The Practical Tax Lawyer, Taxes and Tax Notes. Professor Lipman is a frequent speaker on tax subjects and business groups. I am sure that you are clapping and welcoming with me to this panel session, Professor J. Francis Lipman. I'll move on to introduce the other panelists. I'll move on to Mr. Ryan Alas, who is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, FCCA, and also a member of the International Fiscal Association. Ryan has been at Rogers Capital for over 3 years now, heading the tax advisory team. His mandate is to coordinate the delivery of taxation advisory services to a wide range of local and overseas clients. Having practiced in Africa for several years, he is specialized in international taxation, tax structuring, and transfer pricing. He brings his valuable insights to assist clients who want to invest in Africa. Prior to joining Rogers Capital, Ryan has held several senior positions at Ernst & Young Gabon, Katanga Mining Limited, Democratic Republic of Congo, PwC Mauritius, and the Financial Services Commission in Mauritius. Ryan holds a diploma in law, Bachelor of Science in Accounting and Finance, as well as postgraduate degree in International Tax Planning and Interpretation of Treaties from the Royal Society of Fellows, USA. He is a dynamic and passionate professional, and he believes that everything is possible until proven otherwise. I'll quickly introduce our next panelist for this session in person of Natalia Quinons. Natalia is the international tax partner with Quinons Cruz in Bogota, Colombia. Until January 2020, she was the head of the Office for International Affairs at the Colombian Tax Administration, DIAN. She is a PhD candidate in tax law at Amsterdam University. She holds a JD from Universidad de Rosario, philosophic summa cum laude from Universidad del Andes, and an LLM from a Gerard Wallace Scholar from the New York University. Natalia is a member of the executive board at the Colombian IFA branch and was the chair of the branch until July 1st, 2020. She teaches international taxation at the Universidad de los Andes and is a guest lecturer in various settings across the world. I'll quickly introduce the moderator for this panel session in person of Sheena Obra. Sheena is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. She is the tax affiliate of the Chartered Institute of Taxation, and she holds a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from the University of Wales. Sheena has been at St. Mauritius for 13 years now and has headed the tax team for the last 4 years. Her principal role is to coordinate the delivery of taxation-related services to a wide range of clients, as well as working in tandem with a number of units across the firm. Prior to joining Sane Mauritius, formerly known as International Financial Services Limited, Sheena has worked in a practice firm in the UK for over a year, after which she returned to her home country. I'll do well to introduce the next panelist, which is Mr. Olufemi Olarinde. Olarinde Michael Olufemi is a multidisciplinary professional who holds a bachelor's degree in banking and finance, as well as a master's degree in financial management. He is a professional accountant, a chartered tax associate, and a chartered human resources professional. He is the senior manager at the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, and presently the tax policy support to the executive chairman of the FIRS. He specializes in tax policy, legislation, and research, and he has sat on national committees for the development of tax policies and tax legislation in Nigeria. Prominent among such committees are the National Tax Policy Review Committee, the National Tax Policy Implementation Committee, Nigerian Non-Interest Finance Working Group, and the National Tobacco Taxation Working Group. He is presently the national country correspondent to the Commonwealth Association of Tax Administrators and also a member of the United Nations Subcommittee of Health Taxes. I'll move on to introduce the next panelist, who is Mr. Langton Madzamba. Langton has over 17 years' experience in tax advisory, compliance, and administration, 12 years of which were with the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority. He's currently employed in a management role by a Big Four firm. Langton holds the following qualifications: a Bachelor of Science degree in economics from the University of Zimbabwe, an advanced diploma in international taxation, Chartered Institute of Tax from the United Kingdom, advanced certificate in tax and customs administration, as well as various other finance and tax compliance risk certifications. I would also quickly introduce to us Mr. Ibrahim Abdullahi, who is a trade, finance, and investment lawyer with multifaceted advisory service experience. He doubles as a special advisor to the governor, investment and economic planning. He holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of Reading in the UK and initially practiced as a commercial lawyer in Dico and Mahmood Solicitors and Advocates, and later with partners in Dallahil Law Practice. Mr. Abdullahi has contributed immensely to shaping Nigeria's PPP delivery framework and has participated in and supported a range of multi-sectoral transactions. Abdullahi spearheads the Nasarawa Ease of Doing Business reforms effort. He also serves as the head of the Governor's Delivery Unit, leading the delivery of the Nasarawa Economic Development Strategy, that's Governor Sule's Economic Development Plan, as well as the Secretary of the Nasarawa Investment and Economic Advisory Council. Um, so please welcome with me as we bring on our panelists for this panel session. Thank you so very much for your time, and we look forward to what will be an insightful discourse on what exactly taxpayers want. Okay. While we wait for our panelists to join us on this session today, we could go back to the video interview that we had with Professor Friedman of Oxford University. If you could please help me continue from where we stopped initially.
In an interdisciplinary approach, so it was great to be working with economists on setting up the MSc. But I should say one more thing about the MSc, which is that it was essentially Philip Baker's London MSc, which we took over into Oxford. So Philip has to be given enormous credit for that degree. Transferring it to Oxford was very hard work, and we had to make a lot of adaptations, and it's more interdisciplinary than it was in London. It is different from the London degree, but Philip's work was the core of that degree.
Fantastic. That's quite a journey. So at Oxford, what were your favorite courses to teach and why?
Actually, I really love teaching undergraduates tax because they don't come to it with as many preconceptions, and they are not immediately thinking, how can we apply this in practice? So you can ask some more open questions. But I really love teaching undergraduates, but we try to transfer that over into the tax MSc by making everybody start from first principles and asking questions which are surprisingly new to some people. So I always think of them as very basic questions that we ask in our residential first week, which is called Tax Principles and Policy. And we start by asking really, really basic questions about what is tax. And we have many very people who are already quite distinguished practitioners doing the course, and I think, oh dear, they're going to think this is very very basic, but actually they really like the opportunity and the space and to discuss those bigger questions.
Well, it's fantastic that you provide the space for people to approach tax in an intellectually curious manner, rather than, as you were saying, approaching it from a rather transactional standpoint and figuring how various rules or laws will immediately apply to their facts. So that's very refreshing to hear. Now, you had touched a little bit on this, but I wanted to circle back to the bigger question of, as a woman in tax, what obstacles would you say you have encountered in your career, starting from your student days, through the law firm and into your eventual academic career? And what advice can you impart to women who are embarking on a corporate law journey, on a corporate tax journey, in terms of finding mentors and sponsors and persevering through any sort of quote unquote glass ceiling issues that they may encounter along the way?
Well, I'm quite nervous about giving advice to people now because obviously conditions were different in my day. So I would not want to. I think there's a real danger that people of my age start to give advice based on what they did or the problems that they had. And I think it is much better now. I'm not saying it's easier, but I think that women work together much better because there are more women. So in my day, I was always told not to join women's groups because it was the men you needed to talk to get promotions. And therefore, and we really didn't have very many women's groups because we didn't have very many women. So trying to get together women's groups wasn't particularly successful. What I've learned now from my younger colleagues is that working with other women and networking with other women can be massively useful at this stage of development, because there are senior women around and there are very impressive junior women who can network together and have more impact together than on their own. So I would say work with other women and learn from other women, but don't be put off by older women like me and our experiences, because hopefully things are changing. However, I would say that I am disappointed that things haven't changed more than they have.
I hear that. And I love that advice to draw on other women and rely on other women. I mean, at my company, Tax Notes, I would say that we are a very female-forward company. So definitely my career has been boosted by many women in tax surrounding me. Now, I wanted to move on to some general reflections on your career. So when you take a step back and you look at all that you have accomplished, what would you say has been the most rewarding part of your career?
Wow. Well, I actually think meeting so many people from all around the world has been an enormous privilege. And that's the result of being a teacher. And I don't think I would have done that had I stayed in practice. And it has been wonderful to get to know people from most countries in the world, really, and very, very able people as well. So that is a privilege, to be constantly with young people, ambitious, lively young people. That's something that now I've retired, I miss. I miss being with younger people. I don't want to be with old people of my age all the time. And so I love it when I get the opportunity to come back and be with younger people again. So that's the biggest thing for me. It's the people you're with who are the most important, I think, in career in the end.
And I have to say that's also very generous of you to be so willing to help mentor the younger generations and to want to foster those relationships with lawyers who are on the up and up. Now, of course, I also have to ask you, what would you say has been the most challenging part of your career?
There have been many challenges. So I think it's pretty hard not to say that having children at the same time as trying to pursue a career is very tough, and it always has been, and there's nothing new about that. So
Hello, would you like us to get started finally? Apologies. I believe yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll just dive into it. We're delighted to be here literally from across the globe. And we're talking about boosting taxpayer morale. And I'm a law professor. I'm also a Nevada tax commissioner from the great state of Nevada. And I welcome all of you to come to Las Vegas. The doors are open and we're welcoming tourists. So please do come and pay taxes on our behalf. Thank you. But I'm not speaking in my capacity as a Nevada tax commissioner and or a law professor. I'm speaking as a scholar who studies tax administration. And what I want you to think about from a global perspective about taxpayer morale, unfortunately in the US, because we have such income and wealth inequality, what we are seeing is a dual system for taxpayers. So what has happened is our legislators have defunded the administrative agency to the extent that we have an enormous tax gap. The tax gap is what taxpayers owe but have not paid. The current commissioner, IRS Commissioner Chuck Rettig, has estimated that that is about $1 trillion a year of taxes that are owed that are gone uncollected because the administrative agency, frankly, is outgunned. There are enormous numbers of taxpayers who are not paying their taxes because it's a self-assessment system. However, on the other end, to talk about taxpayer morale, what is very frustrating is that lower and middle income taxpayers, especially during the global pandemic, they are in a different posture from a tax perspective. They are getting their social benefits, including child tax credits, earned income tax credits, and other child care credits. They are getting their supplements to their income and economic impact payments to try to keep the economy stimulated and keep food on the table and people in homes. They're getting their benefits through the tax system. And so when the tax system is underfunded, they can't get their resources. And so it exacerbates income and wealth inequality. And this is especially true for communities of color who, because of systemic and institutional racism in the US and throughout the globe, have suffered wage and income and wealth inequality. And so while we want to boost taxpayer morale globally, I also want to think about and frame why we have a tax system, and that is truly to collect revenue. So it's a complicated question. But thank you, Sheena. I know you're going to dive in and ask questions of all of our panelists, and I appreciate being here today.
Thank you, Professor Francine, and thank you for setting the context. And as you rightly say, there is a big gap. There is a huge hole in terms of tax being collected. And at the same time, we need to understand what taxpayers want. I think in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic also, the need for many countries to raise government revenue has become so much more pressing because there is a need to improve fiscal sustainability, promoting equity, as well as we need to ensure that the growth is not adversely impacting the country. Now, as you rightly pointed out, the government's mission is to collect taxes. But one key aspect is also to understand what taxpayers want. So let's dig into the questions, and we'll start with my first questions will go to Natalia. And I'll start with the quote, which goes as, "In this world, nothing can be certain except for death and taxes." So said Benjamin Franklin. So if certainty is so clearly desirable, how does any uncertainty arise? And can it be reduced or avoided, or should it be reduced or avoided? Over to you, Natalia.
Thank you very much, Sheena, and thank you to the organization for this wonderful conference. I'm really happy to be here. And I absolutely agree with you, Sheena, that uncertainty should be prevented at all costs. And it arises mainly because tax law can never predict all the economic scenarios that can be displayed, especially with a changing world and an ever-developing technology, right? So we have rules in international taxation that date to the late 1800s. And now we're having business conducted from space, online, in the metaverse. It's impossible to really have those rules applied very precisely to these new circumstances. So whenever there's an interpretation of these old rules adapted to the new circumstances, there's always uncertainty. And the way that it can be prevented is by talking about it, by being completely transparent and having an enhanced relationship with taxpayers. So whenever there's changes in business models, can the taxpayer approach the tax administration, show them how it all works, and maybe reach a common understanding of how the old rules can be adapted to the new circumstances. So I think enhanced relationships, APAs, ICAP, all of those dispute prevention mechanisms, ACAP also in the US, are very useful to prevent and reduce uncertainty in these changing times.
Thank you, Natalia. I think so beautifully put that I think transparency is key. And if we had such a relationship with the tax authorities, I think things would definitely be so much easier. I mean, just a second point to raise, Natalia, if in terms of brevity in tax law, I mean, while aiding simplicity in tax laws, it can sometimes create room for subjective interpretation in the absence of detailed definitions. So to what extent you'd agree, or to what extent the revenue authority should be proactive enough to devise communique, statement of practice? I mean, it's a bit in terms of what you just said earlier in terms of transparency, but to what extent do you think those would help in terms of clarifying on complex but yet recurring transactions or situations?
I definitely think that transparency is key to building that relationship. So when you've already established a pattern out there for taxpayers doing a specific transaction, and you've already decided how you want to treat that transaction as a government, then it makes all the sense in the world to go out there and say it. This is how we're going to treat things in the future. Obviously, that's only true for those transactions that are repeated and that you've already made up your mind about. But again, because circumstances change and because there's new transactions happening every day, like I said, we have the metaverse coming up. We've got all the crypto world, everything happening with space taxation. That there's never going to be a world where you know everything and you can predict everything in tax. So again, the best way forward, in my humble opinion, is to be able to approach the tax administration with whatever question or concern you may have as a taxpayer given your very specific business model or your innovation in the economy. So if you're innovating, why can't you approach your closest partner, which is the tax administration and the government, and agree to the treatment of this innovation under the established rules?
Thank you, Natalia. I think you mentioned a key point, which is getting close to the tax authorities, and which brings the second question, is very related, and will be addressed to Mr. Alarinde. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So in the tax world, where we want tax certainty, now it also connects with the term taxpayers' rights. So should taxpayers be considered as customers of the revenue authorities, or should the taxpayers be deemed to be simply adhering to laws as compliant citizens? So the question is, Mr. Olarinde, given your position with the revenue authorities, what does it mean for a tax revenue agency to set goals of making those who interact with it to feel like valued clients and not just taxpayers? Is it a wish that may be granted to taxpayers, or this is extremely far-fetched? Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Sheila. Thank you. Well, I will tell you the pronunciation of my name is Olarinde. So it's syllabic, as it is called, Olarinde. So thank you very much, Sheila. You tried. Oh, so to answer your question, the rights of a taxpayer, you know, when you talk about, you ask whether they are supposed to be treated as a customer or just be treated like, I'll say, it's a common saying that the customer is king, and the tax administrator cannot survive without the taxpayers. So the relationship between the taxpayer and tax administrators is that of mutual benefit. Of course, if there's no taxpayer, there can never be a tax administrator. So when we look at the tax administrator, need to put in things that makes the taxpayer really the king, because the taxpayer is doing business, and it's that business that brings about the income that will be made by the tax administrator, which we call the taxes. Now, what are the things? How will the tax administrator make taxpayer the king? Is truly to always come to their aid whenever the need arises, and by ensuring that all the rights of taxpayer are well protected. Taxpayer education, enlightenment, and sensitization need to be done. So taxpayers need to have adequate education about taxes, about tax policies, about tax processes, and about everything they need to do when it comes to fulfilling their obligation as a taxpayer. There should be a tax advisory system that enables the tax authority give advice to taxpayer on those tax policies. Also rulings. There should be definite. The taxpayer should be able to get rulings on business processes, on their business. When they need to do one type of business or the other, they should be able to get ruling on the tax treatment of such business. There should be tax simplification services. So many of us are not lawyers, and as taxpayers, we always require the lawyers to help read the tax law to understand. Most of the times, the tax laws are written in complicated English, especially in this part of the world. I call them the King James version, the King James English, writing taxes in such version, and so we need lawyers every time to simplify those provisions. So as the tax authority need to provide what we call simplification services to ensure that the taxpayer understand every part of those provisions. The tax authority should also have things we call the help desk, where a taxpayer can always call in to seek for clarification, to seek for information. So All this one ensures that the taxpayer is being treated in a manner that it is aided. We should have call centers. Nothing stops tax authorities to have a 24 hours call center where taxpayers can call in and get their information as and when due. There should be prompt response to taxpayers' inquiry. If a taxpayer writes to the tax authority, knowing that the response is also dependent on his business, or his business depends on it, he should be able to get that information. These are all rights that a taxpayer need to have so that he will be able to fulfill his obligation under the law, and his business will move on fine. If this is done, it shows that the taxpayer indeed is the king. And I believe these are good things to be put in place by every tax authority. And I'm sure this is what taxpayers want. Thank you. This is my short response.
Thank you. I think so many points put forward, and the one that I liked the most was about the 24 hours call centers. I mean, you can just file your taxes and help your clients, I mean, as tax administrators, and it can be a 24 hours thing. Even you're concerned about something, just call them anytime. Not sure how this can be implemented, but I think so many good points put forward to indeed make the taxpayer feel a client. I mean, at the end of the day, as you rightly mentioned, the taxpayer cannot march alone, and the taxman also need the taxpayer. So thank you for that. And I think with taxpayer rights, the one thing that you mentioned was education, and indeed providing citizens with the information to understand how the system works and how citizens can influence the evolution of the tax system is vital to building public trust. Now, whilst the burden is presumed to rest on policymakers, revenue authorities, it is crucial, I think, to get the buy-in of many other stakeholders, such as professional bodies, associations, or even NGOs. Now, Mr. Langdon, how can we foster effective collaboration among the key players, which is the tax administrators, academics, policymakers, so that we can further provide citizens with information on the tax system? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Shina, and thank you for the show and for the discussion. For me, I would say, whilst I have a full appreciation of my colleague, Mr. Olarinde, assertions that the tax authority does have a responsibility to treat the taxpayers as kings, I believe sometimes when you then look at the reality on the ground, there is much that tax authorities still need to do. But surely we cannot count on them for everything, because in any case, their default position in any interaction with the taxpayer is the law. We have also to count on parties like academia, parties like the tax clubs that we're discussing earlier on. I really liked the discussion from the Nigerian perspective. Parties like business people that have got a passion to sort of like recruit fellow business people into the tax pool, if I may put it that way. Because in any case, if you don't take the initiative, then you become the only tax compliant individual, and definitely the burden will be way too much for you. So it's really an initiative that, a responsibility that rests on literally everyone who has got knowledge in tax. You can just imagine that it takes 6 months to 12 months to a year to become a tax professional. But it can take 2-3 days to become a business person after attending a course online. So you then try to balance the two and say, would this person who has all of a sudden become a business person be in a position to know more about tax? So because of the complexity of the tax law, you need players that are willing to simplify things, like what my colleague was saying, because truly speaking, citizens have got a desire to comply, but sometimes it is understanding the law that is a challenge. Sometimes it is the cost of complying that is a challenge. So all efforts must be directed towards making it simple for the taxpayer to comply, including the element of education that you spoke about. Earlier on, there was a presentation from colleagues from universities in Nigeria that were translating their legislation into the local language. Surely that's a piece for academia who would want to explore languages within jurisdictions. Then they can focus on tax legislation, translate it into local languages for the purpose of the citizen to have an appreciation of their responsibilities and obligations from a tax perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langdon. I think something very important that you mentioned was simplicity, and this is something that we'll deal with later. And you also touched base on the clubs, and I did listen to the panel which was on just before us, and I think that was very interesting in terms of setting up tax clubs. So within the focus of education, I mean, you mentioned a few things, and I would like to bounce back to Mr. Omar Ali, and who is also within the revenue authorities. And I just wanted to have his thoughts about how can tax be taught to the layman, and how taxpayers may be supported in being compliant. I mean, Mr. Langdon also mentioned about many taxpayers wanting to be compliant, but it seems that sometimes tax laws are very complex. But within the focus of education, Mr. Omar Ali, and in terms of having been in the revenue authorities, just working there yourself. So how can tax be taught to the layman? How can we further, yes.
Many thanks, Sheena, and I'm very happy for this wonderful meeting. Let's thank you for this. Going back to your question, by the way, you are asking about two important points. First of all, you are asking about the education, and the second one, you are asking about how we can encourage the taxpayer to be committed or to be compliant. First of all, for the education point, I think we need to make more conference, more workshop, or more seminars, and to use the social media in order to make the taxpayer aware of the tax system. Most of the taxpayer need more and more information. We shouldn't ever impose or enact any law before informing the people about the importance of this tax law, about the penalties which will apply if you aren't complied with this law, and about at the same time the benefit of applying this tax law. Returning to another important point, which is the tax compliance. We need to speak about this point briefly. Tax compliance can be affected by many factors. Perceived fairness of the tax system, awareness of the level of the taxpayer, and perception of the government spending and the extent of penalties. Let's respond to every point of this. Perceived fairness of the tax system, which means that we need to make the tax system for the taxpayer more easy and more simple in order to interact with the tax system simply, and in order to remove most of the obstacles which the taxpayer face. The second point, which is the awareness of, or the level of awareness of the taxpayer, as I mentioned before, and this is actually related to the education and how we can provide the taxpayer with the information in order to be aware of the tax law. The third point, perception of the government spending. We need to build more, or we need to build the confidence between the taxpayer and the government to make the taxpayer more loyal. So the taxpayer need to know why, how, and whom the tax is paid. Showing the evidence of the payment is one of the most important points in order to make the taxpayer comply with the tax system. The last point which I need to speak about it, and I am all the time, I'm speaking as the Egyptian tax authority about this point, is how we can encourage the taxpayer to come to pay the tax. this is actually depends on something called reward compliance, which means that to encourage the taxpayer to pay the tax by providing him with special discounts, by giving him gifts and something like this. Most of the strange systems of the tax system is that they are providing incentives for uncommitted person. So how come I need to enhance the taxpayer who is committed to pay the tax before the deadline in order to make the other people or the uncommitted person to make like him or like her? Okay, this is my point of view.
Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. I think definitely giving incentive will encourage taxpayers to come forward and file returns, pay taxes. But I think a key point you mentioned also is about transparency, I think, and to understand where the money goes to. So in the vein of education of taxpayers, a key aspect is understanding tax laws, and many of you have already mentioned the complexity of tax laws. So when there is complexity in a tax system and there is a lack of clarity as to what is expected of taxpayers, and there is the risk that mistakes are made by taxpayers, and a number of tax assessment may be raised by the revenue authorities. So there is almost the universal agreement that tax should be very simple. And can this ever be, though? And my next question will go to to Ryan, as tax practitioner, and the question will be in twofold. Are there acceptable reasons for allowing complexity to be part of a system? And what can and what should be done to promote simplicity in tax laws? Over to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Sheena. Hi, everyone, depending on which area of the globe you're listening from. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. In fact, complexity in tax laws is not something which is new. I will cite a quote from Albert Einstein, which even him said that the most difficult thing in the world to understand is income tax. But the problem is complexity in tax legislation. It's only to the advantage of tax advisors. It's not good for the government, and it's not good for taxpayers as well. Because what happened there, we have great multinationals who can afford tax advisors, but small and medium enterprise, they are affected when the tax system is complex. So tax compliance should be simple, straightforward to understand for taxpayers. It's difficult for small and medium enterprise, for example, to account for income under accruals, etc. Under accounting concepts, IFRS, etc. So small and medium enterprise, we should be able to let them pay their taxes based on cash basis. Simple for them. This will permit tax base to be larger. More people pay tax, so the tax rate can be lower. Tax complexity causes taxpayers, there is unwillingness for taxpayers to comply with tax law when there is complexity. There is more risk of evasion because they are not sure, they don't know what to do. This causes uncertainties also for business. Normally, one of the principles of taxation is tax should not be an aspect which affect allocation of resources. But now, the way it is affecting allocation of resources, especially with transfer pricing, which is something which is very subjective. So what I would say, one of the methods that we can reduce complexity in taxation, not reduce complexity, because taxation is about tax laws, and like any other areas of law, it will always be subject to interpretation. But there should be guidelines issued by the tax authorities statement of practice, there should be tax rulings, there should be advanced pricing agreements for transfer pricing, which are often very costly for taxpayers when there is litigation in transfer pricing, and it's also delays in audit by the tax authorities. So one thing that in Mauritius, the tax authority has introduced is that when you file your tax return, when you're not sure about an item, when a transaction is complex, you can tick the box. You mention that it is complex, you are not sure of the treatment, so you will not be penalized if there is a mistake in your tax return, or there is a conflict between your interpretation and the interpretation of the tax authorities. I think that's the main thing I think that should be done to reduce complexity.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'm from Mauritius also for the benefit of everybody. And I could totally relate, Ryan, to the few things that you mentioned. And I think the last part in terms of the note in the tax return, when you say you're not sure, it sort of invites the taxman to come back to the taxpayer. But nonetheless, as you rightly mentioned, there is no penalty. So we can avail of that sort of option, which is granted to the taxpayer. Thank you, Ryan. The next sub-focus would be in terms of ease of doing business. I mean, there is a direct link between simplicity of tax laws and the ease of doing business in a country or anywhere. So one of the key factors which contribute to the ease of doing business is tax payment mechanism. And this has been shown in various studies. And my next question will go to Mr. Ibrahim Abdullahi. And given his role within the Nasarawa Investment and Development Agency, so during your tenure, have you observed a change in the modus operandi of the tax system over the years, given your proximity in the firm, and in terms of platform as well provided to taxpayers to help in terms of doing business? So over to you, Mr. Abdullahi.
Well, thank you very much, Sheena. It's a pleasure to speak, to join all of you in this conference. I think ease of doing business has been a major concern over the years. An elephant in the room is taxation, either ease of paying taxes or even getting some tax palliatives. We have been implementing reforms over the years in terms of making it easier for taxpayers to pay tax, and also increasing awareness, and also blocking leakages. And I must say that technology has been the biggest game changer, both in the Federation and in subnationals in Nigeria. We have continually leveraged technology. So we've, for instance, in Nasarawa, where I work, we've deployed a central billing system, which links all MDAs, all tax collection authorities onto a central billing system. And we have leveraged this technology to stop cash collection. So all revenue collections are automated. It then means that all taxpayers are able to have access to a payment platform from the comfort of their homes, from the comfort of their businesses. Liberalizing access to collection and payment has done a big magic for us in Nasarawa. It has grown our revenue by over 200%. In 2019, when we came in, our tax collection was within the range of 300 to 400 million naira monthly. By May 2020, this revenue has grown to over 1 billion naira monthly. And this is just using technology to really democratize access to payment. The other issue worthy of note is provision of tax palliatives to businesses, because a lot of times businesses even want clarity in terms of how they pay. They also want clarity in terms of the benefits that accrued to their businesses when they pay these taxes. So we have also been able to use technology to communicate these benefits quite clearly. So I think that technology has been the biggest changer for the modus operandi in tax collection systems. And I think that this is a lesson that we know obviously in Europe and America, this is being deployed already, but all over Africa, these lessons from Nigerian regulatory environment needs to be learned and replicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullahi. I think it's amazing how technology can actually earn a country so much more in terms of taxes. But I think, and this was going to come afterwards, but I'll just shoot the question now because it's right in the center of what you've just said. While we wish to modernize tax administration and encourage online platforms to encourage taxpayers to file returns and pay taxes and make everything so much easier, we should not forget that there is also a fraction of taxpayers who, in addition to who are not well versed with tax laws, they also might not be tech savvy and may be unwilling to explore such platforms to file their returns, understand taxes, and pay taxes. So my next two questions in that respect would go to the two gentlemen from the Revenue Authority side. So firstly, to Mr. Umar Ali, to what extent should revenue authorities dedicate resources to set up tax clinic to assist those types of individuals? Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Umar Ali.
Sorry. I think it depends. Depends firstly on the country, whether it is in the developing country or whether in the development countries. But anyway, I think the more you invest, the more the people will be aware of the tax system. And the more the people will be aware of the tax system, the more we will remove most of the obstacles which will face most of the taxpayer. So we need to make something like a benefit and cost relationship between the amount which we will invest and the return which will come back to us. So it depends. I couldn't ever think that it will be an exact number or something like this. But if you asked me, how can we evaluate this? I think the first priority, as we mentioned before, for the awareness of the taxpayer. So the awareness of the taxpayer will start from the tax authority. So there is no limit to determine whether how much the tax authority should invest in order to make something like this. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Ali. And I think the second question, just to add on, will go to Mr. Olaride. If I get it right, I'm not sure I'm getting the name right, Mr. Olaride, but no, I hope I'll get it right by the end of the session. In continuation in continuation in the same topic, in terms of tax clinics and access to tax information for those who might not fully understand and explore the technology side, so what we're trying to bring forward. Do you think there is a definite correlation between the setup of tax clinics and the adherence to compliance of tax laws? So whether there is a definite link between the two?
Yeah, well, thank you, Sheena. Thank you very much. Actually, that question, if there's a correlation between setup tax clinic and the success of taxpayer education, of course, like we said at the beginning, that the tax authority, being an administrator, should be able to provide education, sensitization, simplification. Of course, the tax authority can never be able to do all the job. And definitely, you need as many people, as many entities to support in doing those jobs. For those of us who are who have a faith, we know that we have religious leaders. However, we as faithfuls are also asked to spread the gospel. So what it simply means that there's so much work to be done, and the more you want the system to be effective, the more crusaders you need to encourage. You need more people to continue to carry on the gospel of tax compliance. So we having tax clinics will definitely help the tax culture, in building tax culture, in increasing tax compliance. And what does tax clinics do is simply to make it easy for taxpayers to be able to comply. So definitely, the more tax clinic we have in the system, the better every tax system is. So definitely, we need to continue to promote tax clinic. Even government need to support such tax clinic by giving a lot different forms of. So when we
sorry, apologies. You might be on mute, Mr. Olaride.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know at what point. I didn't know at what point my
Oh, no,
system
no.
went on.
We heard you just until 10 seconds ago.
Okay. So I was trying to say that the more tax clinic we have, the better the tax system is. So now leveraging on technology, technology definitely is a game changer. Like my brother Ibrahim Ali have spoken. In Nigeria, we've also we've deployed in tax administration, we've deployed technology. However, there are issues when it comes to different classes of taxpayers. So I was engaging a set of taxpayers from the micro and small businesses that complain that the technology with the tax authority in Nigeria deployed was too complex for them to be able to meet up with, as they did not have the requisite technology. So what did the tax authority do? We decided to set up what we call the self-service desk. So you could go into a tax office and have the full facility of technology. And so you could service yourself or also get somebody in the tax authority to help you fulfill your tax obligation using technology. So these are models that have helped, and more tax clinic we have, the better for us. I hope I'm still connected.
You are.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So like I said, the more tax clinic we have, even in this time that we need technology, that we rely on technology, the better for us. We need tax clinics to develop softwares for accounting to support taxpayer compliance. We need those ones that do controls, to be able to do controls for taxpayers accounting. We want control for taxing, so that it could minimize the risk of them of evasion, and so they could comply. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Olawide. I think it's crucial indeed that tax clinics are set up for different kind of people, those who understand, those who want to use the technology, those who do not understand at all. I mean, it goes hand in hand a bit with the 24-hour help desk. I mean, in Mauritius itself, we have the tax authorities which have designated kiosks where they can go and meet the revenue people and file their returns, for instance. It's a bit more for individuals and small and medium taxpayers, and as well as computer, which are set up there so that they can go and use those technology. I mean, great points advanced. Thank you very much. Moving on to a very important topic is in terms of the cost of compliance. I mean, we have rights as taxpayers, but also there is a cost to it. And we also see a shift worldwide in terms of how revenue authorities are becoming more and more aggressive. And although taxpayers want to be more compliant, on the other side, we also find taxpayers who are unwilling to continue business in some countries due to uncertainty, or even because of the increased cost of compliance. So the next question would be to Professor Francine in terms of can the increase in cost of compliance have an adverse effect on the figures which are reported by taxpayers? So, and under the income is not being reported by the taxpayers. Would you think that has a connection with the increased cost of compliance?
So what's interesting about that, in the US, the especially focusing on lower income taxpayers, I really do think in our economy at least, there's such a gap between high income taxpayers and their experience. As many of you said, they can afford paid professionals, lawyers, accountants, and folks who basically design tax strategies for mitigating the costs. And then on the other side, we have lower income taxpayers who are really getting social benefits through the tax system. What has happened because of complexity and lack of access to technology, there are paid preparers, which is the cost of compliance that you're talking about, that are taking advantage of these lower income taxpayers and allowing them to access the tax system by their software and them preparing the tax return. And unfortunately, what they often do is, in order to elevate their own fees, they create mis and disinformation, and the taxpayer is the one who suffers that cost. So I do think complexity, lack of access to technology, and those costs, especially time to try to navigate the various system, has forced many lower income taxpayers to use unregulated, unscrupulous preparers that has caused social benefits to go to these, not the targeted taxpayers, but to these unscrupulous businesses. So I think that that is an issue. And one way we can mitigate it is through free tax services, the government working with volunteers to provide free tax compliance. We have that in the US called VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, and also tax clinics. So I think there are ways we can mitigate it, but simplicity, technology, access to technology and other resources will help.
Thank you, Professor Francine. I think the issue of low-income earners and the increasing disparity between them two keeps on increasing. And I mean, we only have 10 minutes left, I think, but I'll try to. I've got a few more questions, and then so we'll get cracking in terms of in the context of low-income earners. Still, if I may address the next question to Mr. Landon, what tax solutions should be put in place or reintroduce in order to reduce the disparity insofar as tax is concerned between the low and high income earners? Take another context, which Professor Francine just went through, and I think it's a very good thing to reflect about.
Yeah, sure. So she has actually touched on a few initiatives that can actually be put in place. The VITA from the US, and some jurisdictions, they use university graduates where they deploy the university graduates during their semester breaks to help these low-income earners to file their returns. The other strategy that has been used, especially in Africa and in most of the less developed economies, is a presumptive tax, which is basically a flat tax for low-income earners. You don't need any calculation. All you need is to tick a few boxes to confirm your level of income in a particular reporting period. Once you qualify, then you are told you pay a few hundred currency payments, and then that's it. So you would find that that would actually help in a very big way. The other way is going mobile, using the USSDs from mobile companies to really guide taxpayers to pay their tax from the comfort of their homes, and it's less costly. All the proposals that involve visiting the tax authority offices may actually be expensive if compared to someone who can just enter a USSD code, select the tax authority, and go through the necessary steps until they make a payment. So those are particularly a sample of strategies that can be put in place to make sure low-income earners also get into the tax bracket and find it easy to comply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langton. I think filing taxes and understanding the tax system from the comfort of one's home definitely is something to be considered. I mean, there is always the fraction we spoke about who are not tech savvy and need separate guidance, but I think we need to evolve, and doing that may definitely help the general public, taxpayers in general. So thank you for sharing this. The last point that I'd like to speak about, and my question would go to Ryan, in terms of tax terrorism. I mean, the terminology of tax terrorism refers to tax evasion by organized groups of persons for criminal purposes, whereby such activities create significant losses to the government. Well, there is also the connotation of tax terrorism, whereby political executive frequently modifies tax legislation, set higher rates, and unreasonable tax collection targets. And this results in aggressive tax investigations by the tax authorities, and a number of clients suffers from that. So should we be more worried about taxpayers not willing to pay their fair share of taxes, or should we be more concerned about the taxmen being much more aggressive now? Over to you, Ryan.
Sheena, very interesting question. Personally, I think that both are not right. All people should pay their fair share of tax, and true tax advisors will always encourage their clients to pay their fair share of tax. And those who want to evade tax, it's normal that they should be penalized. I have nothing to say about it. But aggressiveness of tax authorities is also not good. I will take an example. In India, I read an article from a tax journal based in India that 87% of assessment raised by tax authorities in India are reversed by the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal in India. The good thing is that the taxpayers at the end, they have the tribunal, they can have recourse to the tribunal. But sometimes the cost of going to the tribunal, this can be damaging for the business of the taxpayers, especially in case where there are economic difficulties. So, and I think what taxpayers want is they know where their money is going. There are Nordic countries who have high tax rates, but very low percentage of tax evasion or tax assessment. That's maybe because those countries, those taxpayers, they know they can have access to healthcare of the highest quality, education system etc. But in many countries, for example, in Africa, we don't have a good health system. We don't have good public education. People send their children to private schools. So these people will say, why are we paying tax? So for me, we should encourage taxpayers to pay tax. They should be getting the services that they expect from tax that they pay. I don't think anyone will complain if they are paying the fair share of tax and getting the services that they need, that they require. That's my point of view.
I could not agree more with you, Ryan. I mean, definitely knowing what you're paying for definitely will sort of encourage a taxpayer to pay, because if you're getting a service for what you're paying, you are less willing to disagree with the system. I mean, just to comment on what you said, 87% of tax cases been reversed. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. But it's good that we do have a system whereby taxpayers can go and appeal and get the decision of some taxpayers reversed. Great. I mean, great points, Advance, Ryan. Thank you for your contribution to the question. And I love how the way all the questions I asked had a sort of flow to what all our dear panelists had to say. And I really enjoy shooting those questions to you, dear panelists. So I'll hand over to the chair, Professor Francine. So over to you.
Thank you, Sheena, for organizing this and creating that wonderful script and flow. I think as we could see, which with each and all of the questions, so many of these issues go back to simplicity, transparency, access to resources. And unfortunately, I think it would be wonderful if we had 24/7 mobile tax services that came to your home and made it seamless, or access to technology that just worked beautifully, and resources where we could monetize exactly what benefits you get. But as we know, that all costs money and ends up creating more of a tax cost. So while in some way the solution seems simple, many of us have, as we've said, have been fighting these fights for a long period of time. But I am very inspired to hear that technology is helping across the globe, and the US can do a better job of accessing technology. There's a real concern with identity theft and those hacking into tax systems. But the more we work together, the better we are. And that includes legislators, because as many of us have said, the folks who write these tax laws often don't understand boots on the ground and implementation. So thank you all, especially Sheena. Your wisdom will help inspire each and all of us literally across the globe.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow, that was such an inspiring, educative, and informative session. Thank you so very much to the panel chair, to the moderator, and to every single person who was a panelist in this just concluded session. Wow. It's day 2 of the Taxpayers Conference 2022, and what an amazing time we have had listening to the panelists who have all shared from their wealth of knowledge, experience, and have brought their A game to making sure that this conference has been a very big success. A very big thank you to everybody who has stayed from the beginning till now. It has been amazing, just watching and learning and just drinking in from the wisdom. I'm sure that you had one or two things to learn. You've learned new things. You had stuff that didn't come to mind before as to how we can jointly put in our efforts collectively to boost taxpayers' morale. I have had so much fun, so much learning, anchoring this day two of the session of the conference. And to bring the conference to a wrap, I would call on the co-founder of Tax House, Mr. Akioluwa Kiride, to give us his vote of thanks and closing remarks. You're welcome. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Funke, and for being a co-host of this conference. It's been an amazing learning experience for me, and I'm sure for every other person that has participated from all over the world. It's been a pleasure listening to everybody. To start with, I, on behalf of Tax House, want to thank, firstly, the students from the various universities that participated in the Global Tax Debate 2 weeks ago. And I listened in, and I could feel the passion in their voices. I could hear and reason with the depth of their research and the statistics they actually advanced in support of their arguments. It was very encouraging, and we know that the future of tax in Nigeria is actually bright with those folks. And also, I want to thank Professor Friedman Judith and Nana Masa for this session also. It was great learning from Professor Friedman, learning about her experience, and as aspiring tax professionals too, all over the world. It was good learning from about how she started her career at Fresh Fields and how she ultimately transitioned to the academia. It was a remarkable learning experience. Then also, we at Tax House are especially grateful to Adit for partnering with us for this conference, and for the IBFD also for the gift to the winner of the global debate that aired 2 weeks ago. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you. Then also want to thank the two Nigerian law firms, that's Abiola Sonny and Co. and Lee Law Barristers and Solicitors. For the internship slots, for the students that participated in the debate, we are grateful. Those two firms are like leading tax firms in Nigeria, and we are grateful for the opportunity to partner with Tax House to offer internship opportunities to the students. We are also grateful to Professor M.T. Abdulrazak, Professor Stephen Dean, Mr. Folabi Elebijo, and Mr. Olufemi Olarinde for the advisory, the technical support, and for being willing to offer their counsel and direction during the planning stages of the conference, and for general advice throughout the process. We are grateful to you, sirs. And we also want to thank the committee members, the planning committee, the moderators, the anchors, the panelists, and the speakers. We also want to thank the partners at Tax House too, Mr. Umar, and especially our principal partner, Mr. Olajide Omoshebi. He literally carried the whole burden of this conference on his neck, and did so graciously, and the conference now is ending as a success. We thank you so much, Mr. Omoshebi, and we look forward to a more colorful conference next year and a more profound learning experience. Thank you very much, and see you next year.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Kirinde, for that wonderful word of thanks. We have now come to the end of the 2022 Taxpayers Conference. A very big thank you to all of our speakers, panelists, people who have contributed one way or the other. And thank you to our guests for staying till the end. Till we'll come your way again. Have a fantastic day. Bye.